Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Rinnegan Naruto was sealed in fairy tale. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by the Omnipresent Sage and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Prologue. Mei looked at the back of Naruto, who was standing tall in one of the ruined buildings in the island of Yuzushiogakure, his ancestral home. His entire rear was hidden by a black coat that reached down his ankles. A kanji for kami was written on the back of the coat. It also had high collars that reached above his ears. 2 swords were strapped on his back. One with a red hilt was peering from his right shoulder, and the one with a black hilt was on the left side. The symbol of kami said it all. He was a god in the shinobi world. He was a SSS rank international criminal who made fun of the power of kages. He was a shinobi who beat kages like a jonin beating the lights out of the fresh academy graduates. Many people called him by many names, some despicable, but to her, he was none other than Uzumaki Naruto, her lover, her dream world husband. Mei had no atom of doubt in her mind that it was warranted for people to call him names and infamously rank him as a god amongst men, despite being branded an international criminal. He was the first man to be ranked SSS rank after all. In a more demonstration of his power, he used all 5 elements to godly level. He was also a master of Fuinjutsu, capable of doing with seals. Some even rumored that there was no seal he couldn't analyze. Sharingan no Kakashi was hailed for copying over 1,000 jutsus. Naruto didn't copy anything, he invented over 1,000 jutsus, in each of the 5 main elements. He was the only to have more than 100 S-rank jutsus under his belt. He could make it rain lightning bolts, or fire, he could control the storms. His control of chakra and the elements was so refined that he controlled natural disasters. This was Uzumaki Naruto, the notorious SSS rank criminal, but not everything was as it appeared. For more than 5 years he's been her Naruto, and though she would never say it to anyone for fear of her own safety, it has been the best 5 years of her unmarried life. It would have been a dream comes true if they didn't have to hide from the eyes of the world each time they met. It would be the story of her life. She could walk around the streets of Kuri flaunting him like he was her playboy. But even if their relationship was a secret, it didn't mean spending time with him wasn't any fun. It was loads of fun, and she enjoyed every moment. She was the only person Naruto showed his smile after all. Association with Naruto was punished with death, no questions asked. It was a law that was handed down by kages of the great 5 hidden villages. This is why she had to keep it a secret from everyone, even someone like Ao. No soul knew of their relationship. Uzumaki was cursed everywhere and said to be the cause of all sorts of trouble. It was even taboo to mention his name, and hence he was usually revered as the demon god. Naruto was a menace after all. He had brought chaos and death to each major village. He'd beat down the twin heroes of Kumogakure single-handedly, inside Kumogakure, in broad daylight while the shinobi of the village watched. He had beat the Raikage in a battle of speed by a large margin that left the whole of Kumo standing still trying to comprehend the situation. It seemed unbelievable. One man defeated 2 Jinchurikis with full access to the powers of their bijus, and the Raikage, but Naruto had done it, without an army. He was only using lightning, Fuinjutsu, and Genjutsu, as well as Kenjutsu and Taijutsu. The former loud and unpredictable team was now the most wanted men in the world, with a record bounty of 1 and 9 zeros. The amount was funded by a total number of 13 shinobi villages, with the great villages contributing the most amounts. So many lives had been lost in his killing sprees, or rampages. Each of the great village was affected as well as some small villages. Within the shinobi world, Naruto was the devil, feared more than the Akatsuki, and loathed more than Orochimaru, or any menace that has ever graced the land. They feared him just as much as Konoha's civilians wet themselves when they think of the Kyuubi's rampage years ago. He is after all the only man to have directly and single-handedly attack each of the great nations without losing a foot or a toe. The attacks began with Konoha, where he assassinated some of its high-ranking officials before fleeing, and the rest followed. It was an outrage in Konoha when they actually learned of his actions, and Tsunade had refused to believe it, either did Jiraiya. They believed there was an explanation for it, and Jiraiya started to search for him looking for answers. But Naruto disappeared from the face of the world for a few years. The nations were left bewildered, and in a standstill as a single human had been able to enter a village like Kumogakure with the purpose of killing and actually succeed in doing it, after defeating the Kage and the twin protectors, the hailed perfect Jinchurikis of Kumogakure. Naruto crushed them while the residents of Kumogakure watched, and left with his hands inside his pockets. He wasn't running away when he left the village, he was walking at a leisurely pace. They couldn't chase after him, not after everything. Besides, they had bigger things to worry about than chasing the criminal. Their leaders were down the ground, bleeding and unconscious. They had to tend to them before anything else could be done. Stability and healing the wounded came first to chasing him. Yes, the great Kumogakure, which boasted 2 Jinchurikis, the fastest man in the elemental nations, allowed Naruto to leave after defeating the aforementioned shinobi. When Inoki was laughing at Kumo's misfortune, with hidden intent to elevate his village higher as the rivals were taking knocks, it didn't take long for Naruto to walk straight into Iwagakure, through the gates. By then he was already a wanted man in the Lightning Country with a bounty on his head. Naruto went on another rampage in Iwagakure, a rampage that left Inoki hospitalized, near death. He was only saved by the best medic within the shinobi world, Tsunade. Naturally, when he healed, he ordered for Naruto's head to be delivered before his desk in a silver platter. But the only delivery he received was the heads of his own men. The reaction was a mutual agreement with A to raise Naruto's level to SS rank. It was somewhat amusing to me that Naruto wasn't only hated by those villages he'd attacked. No, even other criminals loathed him. He did after all remove any bandits, missing nin he came across. His actions were also forcing the great villages to be very stern when it came to criminals. It became very difficult for criminals to live because shinobi were all over, searching for Naruto. Naturally, the real criminals blamed Naruto. Naruto turned around to face the Mizukichi. The look on his face grim, a very, very sad smile was plastered across his face. He had embarked on this journey a few years ago, and he'd known that a day would come, the day he had to leave her, and that day was within his eyesight. For the past 3 years he's been running around the elemental nations causing nothing but chaos and destruction. All he ever told these people was that he was merely testing their powers, or that he was bored. He'd killed so many people, he'd embarrassed the Kages so many times, and he'd committed all sorts of crimes against the major villages. He'd sought to control them all. One of those days he told them he wanted to rule all great villages since he was superior to any Kage. A Kage is the strongest shinobi in a village. The strongest is always selected to demonstrate strength and control. If a weak man is selected to rule people, how will he lead them without the power to enforce a few things? Shinobi respect power. Authority in the shinobi world doesn't cut it, but you must have the strength to enforce that authority you have. Over the past years, I have defeated everyone who you call the strongest. I have embarrassed you all. Thinking of fighting you again even bores me. You're not a challenge to me anymore. Every shinobi fears my name. I have eliminated the likes of Orochimaru, and one by one I dealt with the members of Akatsuki. You should be thanking me for eliminating such peasants. Naruto had said those words to the gathered Kages in one of their Kage summit as they were discussing strategies of how to handle him. The only reason you eliminated Akatsuki is because they opposed you, and eventually would have clashed with them because you were a threat to their plans. It was the kind of response he received. But Naruto merely shrugged. Reasons aside, the fact is that I have eliminated the nuisances in this world. Yes, I have dealt with all the threats. As I have said, I am stronger than all you Kages combined, and I control the power of the strongest Biju. If those with power rule over a village, don't you think I who have gained the title of God should rule all over you, bastard? The Reikage had exploded as soon as those words left his mouth. This was your plan all along. You want us to play humble slaves to you. The big man was this close to ramming his fist to Naruto's gut at that time. Well, he could try to do so. You great villages have demonstrated that the strong do what they want and get away with anything. Konoha is a prime example of this. You cannot deny this, Tsunade, Naruto had said in a steel tone. You people call me a demon, a god, that means I am no longer human to you. You have enslaved Bijus because you believe you're superior to them. I, a demon, a god, have proven that I am superior to you in power, and I want to put you under my rule. What reason do you have to complain if you do the same to those things we see lesser of? In simple words, you see us as lesser beings because you're stronger than us, hence you feel it is only right that you rule over us. Gaara had summed it up quite perfectly. You underestimate our power, Naruto, Tsunade had exclaimed, smashing the table in her anger. We're not that weak that we will bend over your will. You'll regret underestimating the power of the great 5 villages. One of these days you will pay, I swear in the name of my grandfather. His response back then came fast. You'd need him in your corner to defeat me, Tsunade, Naruto said. But I have no problem in testing that now. If you feel so powerful and actually believe that you can defeat me, we can have a match right here and now. The reaction of the Kages was almost amusing. No one wanted to fight him at that time. He had already defeated them one-on-one, and then when they were all gathered, I will be waiting for your answer soon enough. If it doesn't come soon, I will be forced to give you a choice, death or become a puppet. A flash of black followed then as he disappeared from the presence of the Kages. Since then, the Kages have been striving hard to strengthen their forces while he was patient. Villages were on lockdown as battlegrounds, and strategies were drawn. It was clear to him, and he'd known it from the beginning, that they wouldn't agree to his proposal. They would rather die trying than kneel before him. The world saw the villain in him, but it wasn't the entire truth. His actions were a mere illusion that hid his true motives. He wasn't after the power of the 5 Kages. He had no desire to rule over anyone. He just wanted everyone to hate him. He wanted to carry the hatred of all the people in the elemental nations and die along with it, freeing the world from the cycle of hatred. The thing that led him to the notion was when Jiraiya started talking about peace. Peace. Jiraiya had often brought about the concept when they were wandering around the elemental nations during their 2.5-year training trip. Naruto didn't quite understand the concept, but when the Sannin spoke so passionately about it, like he was a monk from the first generation of humans to have graced this land, Naruto found himself intrigued by the idea. The more he listened to Jiraiya, the more he became interested in it. He may have held a big heart, gullible in many ways, but he never thought of the notion of peace. With Jiraiya, the idea became invested inside of him, and it grew rapidly. So much that he started loving to read, an activity he found to be a chore to be done by old farts that are locked up in a home with nothing better to do. He wanted to find more about this concept of peace, how it could be achieved. Jiraiya said he wanted it to the world, even the Yondaime Hokage wanted it, even the Shodai Hokage wanted, but none of them have ever found the answer to it. Don't worry, Erosenin, I will find the answer, Naruto had so happily proclaimed with a huge grin on his face when Jiraiya was, as he often did, speaking so passionately about peace. What was the answer to peace? To understand this more, he had to understand the shinobi world. It was digging deep that brought Naruto to his knees. The shinobi world was a flawed and cruel world. Konoha may be painted pure happy, but it wasn't like that. His desire to read meant he entered into places he wasn't supposed to, just so he could look at those closed records. The records in the library gave him a highlighted picture, edited crap that painted shit with honey. The first thing that Naruto discovered was that no one was perfect, no one was as good as they claimed to be. Adults were liars. Two-faced liars who told them, children, lies decorated in vanilla cream to make it taste sweet, while they kept the truth to themselves. Tsunade was a liar, the man he had come to see as his savior, as his father figure was a liar. His beloved Gigi was a shit-faced liar. Everybody was liar. The whole shinobi world was flawed and crawling with blatant corruption. Then he was forced to answer the question, what was the way to find peace in such a cruel world? This was his answer. Through his experiences with Konoha, he came to understand the harsh reality. It was only naivety that made a man think that humans in the elemental nations would come to understand each other through love. Konoha didn't understand him, hence their hatred of him for being the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. But those people agreed to with each other in their hatred of him. If he died, they would be free of their hatred, but there was a possibility that they might just find something else to hate. The choice he made was to eliminate all evil that people could hate. Orochimaru and the Akatsuki were such evil that needed to be eliminated. They couldn't think that he was doing it for them. No, they thought he was just eliminating competition. They were all evil after all. An empire didn't need two kings, it only needed one. For his plan to work, he needed to draw their utmost hatred out. All his actions were for this purpose. Are you sure about this? Mei asked, walking over to him. Her hands went behind him, engulfing him in a tight, warm hug. You can always postpone. We can always run away together to other lands who have no connection with shinobi. Naruto smiled, holding her too. You don't mean that, Mei, he said. I can't live with myself anymore in this world. Watching the looks my friends give me tears me apart, even if what I am doing is to bring peace to this world. Dying in those people's hands, no matter how brutal it is my atonement for all those people I have sacrificed. Yes, if he died carrying the hatred of all the shinobi on his shoulders, then the shinobi world would be free from hatred. Right now, they were united in an effort to purge him from this world. Mutual hatred was the only strong feeling that could unite shinobi, and he has done it. He held all evil. The other menace in the shinobi world were dead by his hands. With his death, this hatred would turn into joy. All nations will be joyful knowing that the enemy has gone. Their joy will then turn into harmony, and peace will be within the grasp. Of course there was a chance that they could go back to hating each other after killing him, but he trusted Mei, and believed that a person like Gaara couldn't be consumed by hatred, not after everything. With these two, Mei especially, he believed she could maintain the temporary peace his death would bring and turn it over to lasting peace. After his death, new Kages were surely to be elected, and a new era would start. He counted on Mei to be the pioneer of a new peaceful era. It will sound a bit selfish from me, but I don't want you to die. I don't want to spend the next years without you. We've been in a relationship for these past years, and I can't imagine my life without you. I can't bear to watch you die, not in the way they plan to murder you, the Mizukage whispered down in Naruto's left ear, her tone sad. All kinds of depressing emotions bluntly uncensored from her voice. Naruto didn't like the sound of her voice. He knew it would be painful for her to watch, but he had to do this, and she had promised him that when the time came, she would accept his choice. Mei, the hatred on the elemental nations is on my shoulders. I'm struggling to even stand straight under the weight. Only you keep me from being consumed by this hatred. So please, he was begging, pleading for her to let him go. Naruto allowed Mei's grasp to leave him, before he placed both his hands on her shoulders, just so she could see how broken he was. Mei bit her lip, and placed her right hand on her belly. She couldn't say it. No matter how much she wanted him to know, no matter how much she wanted him to stay, if she said it, it would break him. No doubt she wanted him to stay with her, but if she brought it out, it would kill him, his dreams, literally, and she wouldn't be able to live with herself. The feelings she felt were overwhelming. It felt like she was being crushed under a heavy torrent waves of a furious sea. The waves were slapping her in all directions. She wanted to cry, and she wanted to beg the gods to give another alternative. She thought she could handle this, but after falling in love with him, and the only person who he showered with affection, she couldn't, but she had to. For Naruto's sake, Mei forced a smile. The unified forces will reach your hideout in 4 days. At least let me have you to myself for the next 3 days. Her smile was forced, Naruto knew it, but he couldn't point it out. She was trying for his sake. He could at least try, for her sake. He pulled her closer to him, and held her tightly, like he was giving her one of those goodbye hugs. I'd like that. A few days later, the hideout Naruto called his hiding ground, the Holy Grail, he used wasn't anything special, but it was underground, deep within the green forest of the Fire Country, where people rarely crossed. Even if shinobi did come across such a place, they couldn't see his hideout unless one had the Byakugan. The Sharingan couldn't see through the barrier Naruto had set up. Naruto looked from the tallest tree around the area near his underground hideout, the den of the demon god. 5 small armies were coming in all directions. He didn't have to guess that the army was composed from the mightiest shinobi of all great hidden villages. They'd supplied their strongest shinobi to fight him, and all the Jinchurikis had gathered within the army. It wasn't just the Jinchurikis that packed heavy muscles. The Kages were also present with renewed strength and confidence. This was what you called the perfect elite force to eliminate the demon god. The strongest gathered, even with some who he could call criminals were gathered, all in the name of killing him, all in the name of dealing with the common enemy, Uzumaki Naruto, the demon god. The intention was clear around the air. They wanted nothing but to see him suffer, then watch the great demon die, by their own hands. He was ready though. Honestly, he hadn't lived long enough to say that he was tired of living, but he had seen and experienced in this corrupted shinobi world. Everything was corrupt. 1/3 of the shinobi were corrupt. Friends betrayed each other in the name of greed. The stronger bullied the weak, all in the name of excising their power as the strongest. For now, even though the atmosphere was pregnant with the stinking scent of underrated hatred that oozed from almost every shinobi, nations were unified. He had done enough to ensure that their hatred of him wasn't eclipsed by any person. The nations had one common goal, they share the same desire, and this desire has brought them together. The Kages have spent much time together in meetings over the past years. By now, they know each other well. A Kage like Tsunade would seek to do everything in her power to ensure that another incident like this doesn't happen again. Yes, all leaders will agree to methods of ensuring that another Naruto wasn't born in this world to avoid what they had to go through. Methods against criminals would surely be implemented to ensure a stable world that wasn't prone to have another demon god who sought nothing but tyranny. It looks like this is going to be our last battle together, Kurama, Naruto said in thought to the bijou sealed inside of him. He didn't know how it happened, but he had grown to like the bijou. It was even puzzling to think that the bijou would be so willing to work with him without demanding anything in return. Being that the Kyuubi was known as a bijou of nothing but mass hatred, people started suggesting that it was the bijou that had turned a kind-hearted Naruto into a cold-blooded murderer. But to people of Konoha who still held some loathing towards him, his actions were only a confirmation of what they believed all along. They felt their actions were justified, and could happily say, "We told you he was a demon." Perhaps it was why they chose to brand him as the demon god. He had a demon sealed inside of him, as they said. Kurama wasn't a demon, but they chose to believe such nonsense just so they could justify their actions towards bijous. Naruto also had godly powers, so the name was befitting to him. With all that he has been doing, it meant that the Kyuubi was hated more than it had been, and it couldn't live in this world freely. First, it would have to be reborn. Since he was going to die, it would also die with him. Its death was only temporary though. Perhaps the bijou saw it fit to die just so it could be away from lowly humans for a while. It never for once praised a human other than the legendary Sage of Six Paths. Then again, that man wasn't exactly what you call a human. His mother wasn't precisely human either. It doesn't just look that way, it is that way. Isn't it that you plan on dying for these humans? Kurama asked quietly, head rested on his paws, inside the seal. Are you second-guessing your choice? What makes you say that, Kurama? Naruto asked. Just a feeling and your hands are shaking. Naruto looked at both his heads, they were indeed shaking. A cold sweat was also running loose on his forehead. My only regret is that I never had the chance to have a family of my own with Mei. Although my heart has been torn apart, I do not regret my choices. I believe that this was the only way. He looked above the heavens as the enemies neared him in all directions. Perhaps it is the excitement that is making my body shake. PFT, Kurama was not the least amused. I know you better than anyone, Naruto. Maybe you have no regrets of your choice of path, but you're far away from being excited right now. You're actually crying right now, isn't it why you won't even face me? Naruto smiled sadly. Did you have to say it, Kurama? He asked. Well, I can say nothing but thank you for everything you've done for me, Kurama. I can say that you've been the best friend I've ever had. There were many times I was nearly consumed by darkness, but I kept going because of you. Aside from Mei, you were my one true friend. Naruto then appeared within his mindscape. He gave Kurama one of his old wide grin, left hand on the back of his head, and his right held out straight with his fist faced the giant-tailed beast. Will you bump your fist with me for the last time? Kurama stared him for a few moments before he rose up. A toothy grin formed in his face, and their fists bumped. No word was said, as Naruto disappeared from his mindscape. Naruto closed his eyes for a full minute. When he opened them, the whole forest was surrounded by more than 100 strong shinobi, almost half of them ranking S rank. There was no one in the group that couldn't hold his own, even if for a few minutes, against an S-rank shinobi. The only ones who didn't meet that category were the medics, who were behind the frontliners. Eyes filled with nothing but pure hatred stared at his figure within burning fire and confidence in his defeat. The hatred that was being directed at him was almost sickening. Some looked at him like he was a real demon, Some had malicious grins that promised nothing but sadism. Naruto almost felt like digging a hole just so he could hide under those stares. These people looked nothing like the people he wanted to save. These shinobi looked like people who were lost in their hatred. He wasn't faced with shinobi who wanted to rid of evil. It looked like it was evil against evil. Could it be that they'd chosen to be evil just so they could fight against the real evil? Naruto shook his head. It wasn't time for such thoughts. Naruto jumped down to the ground, but no one made a move. The hardened gazes of the Kages all just followed his movements silently without a word. He held both his hands together before speaking. I require some space. That was all the warning he gave. Wind explosion. The surrounding shinobi quickly fled from all areas. It was just one jutsu, one powerful jutsu. In a manner of speaking, it was a Shinra Tensei. Naruto had developed the jutsu after he had battled Nagato. Depending on the amount of chakra he put behind the jutsu, it could just be as disastrous as a Shinra Tensei, but its scale of destruction was a little low, depending on the strength of wind blowing around the atmosphere. In the release of the jutsu, an explosion occurred around him and spread in all directions, destroying everything that stood in the way. What made it dangerous was that it was mainly made up of hundreds of thousands sharp wind blades that were capable of shredding anything. The destructive power of the blades was in the same level as the Raisin Shuriken. Every tree within a 120m radius disappeared in a flash, leaving a barren ground with Naruto standing tall in the middle, not minding the small amount of dust that was still settling down. Not a few seconds passed, and every shinobi appeared again, after they'd retreated to avoid getting caught in the range of Naruto's jutsu. It was no surprise to anyone to see him throw an S-rank jutsu just like that. He was a specialist of S-rank jutsu after all. The Kages stepped forward from around the forces. Naruto ignored the presence of Mei. He couldn't face her and looked at Tsunade, who was on his right. He faced the Godame Hokage. She didn't look too happy. Perhaps it was because he'd hurt Jiraiya so badly that he wasn't able to fight anymore. The Sannin was just a civilian right now. Naruto had no choice in the matter but to end Jiraiya's career as a shinobi. The Sannin kept chasing after him, never giving up and trying to make him to change his ways and return to Konoha. For many times he just told the Sannin to hit the road. But the last time they met, Jiraiya brought up the Minato card and he was honestly tired of it. Another was that if he ended the man's career as a shinobi, then he wouldn't have to kill him. Perhaps another reason was just to punish him for abandoning him. Jiraiya did abandon him, and his reason was he had duties to fulfill as a shinobi. With his career over, he could stay grounded. For old time's sake, Naruto smiled like he did when he was at Konoha, and used the same happy tone he always did. Don't look like that, Bachan, it isn't good for your health. If more than anything, he wanted to calm his nerves, and the tension all over his body. He was going to face death. He could feel the breath of the death licking his skin right now, and it wasn't making him comfortable. Tsunade's look twisted into that of pure anger. Don't you dare act like him. You're nothing like him. The fifth Hokage snarled furiously. She couldn't accept that it was really him, so she chose to believe that it wasn't the Naruto she knew. The one she was seeing was imposter. Humans had different ways of coping, even he had his own methods. But he didn't discard the harsh reality just because he couldn't handle it. No, he always accepted the reality, no matter how painful it was. He wouldn't even have walked in this path if he couldn't deal with the truth. Accepting and matching on was what he has been doing. Naruto shook his head, but chose not to say anything. He didn't want her to experience pain more than this. Besides, if he kept talking, it would only antagonize her further, and she would no doubt lash out at him with all her might. A part of the reality he had to accept was that his friends, no former friends, were hurt because of his actions. To them, he had betrayed them, their friendship. Truly speaking, Naruto felt like he had betrayed them, the handful of people who'd accepted him. Sakura couldn't even look at him without cursing him. He was responsible for the death of her beloved Sasuke. He shouldered all the curses, he accepted them. He couldn't leave Sasuke alive anyway. The day he killed Itachi was the day the Uchiha made him promise he would take care of his brother. Sasuke was a menace, a corrupted child who roamed around the elemental nations with a fake Madara. If he wasn't like that, he would have left him alive. Sakura could hate him, but he did what he believed was right. Calm down, Hokage, I said in a firm tone. It won't do us any good if you get worked up before we even start fighting. The man for once wasn't being led by his emotions. Sorry, Tsunade apologized quickly before calming her nerves. Let us do this already, Inoki said impatiently. I'm not getting any younger and I have to see his death before I too die. The shinobi around the clearing nodded in agreement. The common thought was the death of Naruto, nothing less. If they couldn't do that today, if they were defeated, then they would be forced to live under his rule. No one wanted a tyrant, not in this world. We will not ask you to surrender, for we know you will not do that, Gaara started flatly. I can only hope that you're prepared for this. Naruto forced a smile. A massive wave of chakra exploded, forcing everyone to step back a little and cover their eyes, shielding them from the debris that had picked up. The chakra he'd released was rather frightening, but they were prepared for it. If they weren't, they would have hit the ground just by seeing that small power-up. When it cleared, Naruto was holding both his blades, still standing comfortably. I too hope that you're ready to face the consequence of your defeat. If I kill everyone here, taking over your villages will be quite easy, Naruto said, looking straight at the blank stare of Gaara. Then we can't afford to lose here, Mei said, looking up, avoiding facing Naruto directly. Neither could she look at him without breaking. He was her lover, and she had to fight him to death. There was something in her tone that Tsunade caught. Are you okay, Mizukage Dano? Yes, Mei forced a smile. It is just a shame that we have to waste such a fine man, she said rather dryly. She steeled her resolver. If she broke down, Naruto would be forced to act, and that would ruin everything. Shall we get this over with already? Naruto asked, looking a bit impatient. The battle has already started, Gaara said. A wave of sand burst forth from the ground, forcing Naruto to jump to avoid being caught. His evasion was predictable. Kakashi and another shinobi from IWA were right above him, waiting. Earth-style, twin mud dragon. Both yelled out simultaneously. They form a large two-headed dragon that sped down towards the blonde in a fast speed, looking to slam him down the ground. Gaara's sand also charged from the ground, moving towards Naruto. Naruto merely smiled as both attacks engulfed him, for a moment that is. Everything was blown away from him by pure wind, sending chunks of earth all over the terrain. Naruto then hit the ground unharmed. I expect better from you people. We were merely testing you. Then it happened. Attacks from angles came flying towards him in a heap. The Kages, excluding Gaara, didn't tangle with their forces. They waited, with the Jinchurikis. This was just a preparation. The main event was soon to arrive. The battle waged on around the place in blurry images as Naruto clashed with the forces of the unified nations. Naruto cleaned the numbers one by one. It didn't take long for the Kages to step into the fray to challenge him. Those still remaining continued to fight him. Their coordinated attacks forced him into the defensive. Once he was made to defend, the Jinchuriki stepped in their Bijou forms. Naruto battled 7 Jinchurikis, and the Kages. Their combined efforts proved to be overwhelming, even for him. But combining his chakra and Kurama's gave him more speed and power to battle a full-grown Bijou. Naruto didn't exactly need to battle the Bijous. Yes, after some time, seeing that they were relentless, he did what he did best, contact with them and seal away the Bijous, making the Jinchuriki normal. The real turning point of the battle was when Kakashi took out his right arm with Kamui, and the result became inevitable from then. He was already prepared to die. He just wasn't going to make it so obvious to them. With one of his hand missing, their confidence grew back after he had dismantled it by cleaving through their numbers. In the end, he gave up and multiple blades pierced through his body from the back and the front. His clothes were already tattered, and his blood was leaking all over due to the many wounds he'd received throughout the battle. To cap it up, a large spear was put through his chest, and then embedded down the ground to hold him up. This is the end, Naruto thought mildly as he could vividly make the images and sounds of the rejoicing remaining shinobi out there. Only less than 20 remained though, including the Kages and the Bijous. Still, he held no regrets, even when they staked his body on a pole for everyone to watch. Even when they held the pole and took away his body to their homes, carrying it like a trophy. Well, he was dead. Fiori Earthland. Naruto found himself surrounded by an unfamiliar forest, and he was in no doubt in a high altitude. He could very well feel the atmosphere within his surrounding that this was a mountain. The forest looked new. It wasn't the elemental nations. He had traveled throughout that world looking for good spots he could make his home. This was new. He expected himself to be rotting in a pit somewhere in hell for all his sins. He was after all willing to see hell just for the sake of the shinobi world. He was dead, he had died. He couldn't deny that after seeing his body through a glass of window while his soul left it. But everything had just gone haywire after that, and he couldn't make of what had happened. This wasn't hell. It led him to question, is this heaven? He asked, particularly to no one since he was all alone. You wish. An amused but strained voice of his old friend rang through his head. Kurama, is that you? Naruto sounded a bit happy since he thought that he would never ever again hear the deep voice of the Bijou. He couldn't feel the presence of the Bijou inside of him, and even when he tried entering his mindscape, he couldn't. It felt like he was trying to go through a door that didn't exist. It is me, Kurama said, still his voice was strained. I don't have much time, but I will explain a few things to you and don't interrupt me. The tone was stern. This is not heaven or hell. I don't even think such worlds exists. This is a new world. It is either an alternate world, or the distant future of your world. It could also be a parallel universe. I'm not certain. You will have to find the answers on your own. Naruto was a little puzzled. What do you mean by that, Kurama? Your soul may have left your body, signaling your death, but I took over your body, keeping it alive just to see what those humans would do to it. But I imagine that things must not have gone well for you because your body wasn't dead, so technically, you were still alive. Your soul must have sought to return since your body was calling it, but since I was occupying it, it couldn't return and it was involved in a struggle between entering its body and moving to the afterlife. I assume both forces were pulling it, causing you some discomfort. Anyway, those humans considered burning your body after they had paraded it. But some argued that your ashes might stain their world. In the end, Kakashi used that Kamui. Despite it all being overwhelming, Naruto still found a conclusion. If I wasn't dead, then they would have noticed with the beating of my heart that I wasn't dead. The fact that my soul left my body only meant that my heart had stopped beating. I can only speculate that since you didn't die with me like you're supposed to, my connection with you was the problem. But I know that my heart stopped beating. I felt it. Even though we used to hate it, you and I were eternally bound by that seal. What happened after Kakashi used Kamui? This, Kurama said. What do you mean this? I don't actually recall what happened. But your soul and body were warped in the Kamui. But since your soul was already being pulled into the afterlife, while still connected with your body, I assumed that you didn't end up in Kakashi's dimension. But the friction between Kamui and the world of the afterlife may have caused a new portal to open that sent you here. Naruto blinked a couple of times. That doesn't make sense. Did you just make that up, Kurama? Would you believe it if I told you that you were given a second chance to live by Kami? Well, this isn't an illusion, otherwise I would have noticed already. My hand was missing when I died, but now I'm perfectly fine. The only problem is that I'm completely naked though and look a bit young. Still, I am alive, and well, I don't think I have any choice than to believe something. If he was alive when he knew that he was dead, then he had to believe that some great natural force worked wonders to make this reality because it was sure as hell wasn't an illusion. Maybe I should have chosen that explanation first, Kurama mused mildly. Naruto, I can't hear you, Kurama. Oi Kyubi, can you hear me? Chapter 2, A God Living a Normal Life. This world boasted god slayers who are said to be able to kill gods. It also boasted dragon slayers who are also rumored to be able to kill dragons. Dragon slaying magic was a magic taught by dragons after all. There were real dragon slayers and artificial ones who had lacrima inserted into their bodies at a young age. This kind of magic wasn't available to anyone as the true dragon slayers were taught the magic by dragons who have now disappeared from the face of the world. Naruto wasn't a slayer. He was neither a god slayer nor a dragon slayer. They say that those who possessed such magic were very strong, but it didn't matter who trained you and who taught you the magic. The most important thing that mattered was how you executed your magic. The rule that only a dragon slayer could kill a dragon didn't apply to him. A dragon was somewhat equivalent to a bijou. There was a belief that only a Jinchuriki could defeat another Jinchuriki. But that was a false belief. It was blatant ignorance. Even those who weren't a Jinchuriki could make a mockery out of the power of a human sacrifice. It would be believable if they were saying that dragon slayers were the strongest mages in Earthland, then he would be inclined to believe that they could deal damage to dragons. But there were mages who were far superior to dragon slayers, in many ways. Still, this world believed in such a fairy tale. During the glorious days which he brought the elemental nations to their knees, he was called a god, and he had the power to back it up. There was nothing, no jutsu that he couldn't perform. In some ways, he had taken after the professor. Being feared as god wasn't just for show, he had no equal in terms of power. He was on a league of his own and every other shinobi was just a child in terms of power. He was god. He didn't need to be a dragon slayer to kill a dragon. He didn't need to be a god slayer to slay a god. He is God himself. The magic of God was in him. He was Kami. And such beliefs that only a dragon slayer can kill a dragon, he found to be laughable. He was Naruto Uzumaki, after all, the SSS rank international criminal. The man who invented over 1,000 jutsus in 5 different elements. The man who could perform an S-rank jutsu like it was a mere D-rank jutsu. He was the man who defeated the 5 Kages single-handedly. He was a man who was rumored to be stronger than the legendary Hashirama Senju. He was the man whose name was feared in all parts of the shinobi world. Parents told scary stories about him to quiet down their children. Kages. Naruto. Naruto was brought out of his thoughts when a voice disturbed his thought process. He looked at the front of the counter and saw a black-haired woman. The hair was short, and she had black eyes. She was also fair-skinned. She wore a white short-sleeved top, which was left a bit unbuttoned around her sizable bosom. She added that with a black miniskirt and black leggings, with light brown boots. On the background behind her, there were laughers of all kinds, curses being thrown from table to table. Soft music played within the large hall of the double-story bar. The scene behind this woman, to be put it simple, was a scene of men and women getting drunk while others shared cold and dark jokes. At least they weren't throwing bottles at each other. Naruto's gaze fell upon the woman in front of him. Again, she had a somewhat annoyed look on her face. "Can you give me 2 cold beers please?" she finally said after staring down at him for a few moments before shaking her head. Naruto smiled. "Coming right up," he said before going over to a large double-door refrigerator that was behind him to get the beers that had been requested. This was what the infamous demon god had been turned into, a barman. If other gods were watching this, they would be probably having a ball about this. The most wanted man in the elemental nations had been reduced to serving beer for a living. Laughable. Truly laughable. But Naruto didn't mind. This was his shot at a regular life, and he wasn't letting it pass by doing something ridiculous like laying down the same plan he did in the elemental nations. He had chosen to live a fair and hard-working life to earn his living. Of course he did so many researches about this world to understand it a bit more, but for now, he enjoyed his nights serving beer to the customers, even taking shit from some foul-mouthed sons of bitches. It was an earnest job he did, and he had no complaints. Even when he hasn't heard the voice of his former tenant since the day he appeared in this world, he was continuing with his life. He regarded this as a second chance to live a peaceful life, perhaps even experience what those he left behind in the elemental nations were experiencing. The only thing that disturbed him was that inner voice that was always whispering things to him. At least he didn't hear it now that he had come to the capital, where he didn't get to see some things that reminded him of the elemental nations. He didn't understand much about how he came here, since it was one big mystery he couldn't fathom. But he chose to just go with the flow and live his life. Naruto brought the 2 beers he was requested to bring and handed them to the woman over the counter. "There you go, Ika-chan," he said, smiling. "Anyone giving you problems tonight?" he asked. The problem with working during night in a bar was that when the perverted males became drunk, they started putting their hands where they weren't supposed to. Of course, Naruto didn't permit the groping of his fellow workers by lecherous men who were intoxicated by the beers they were gulping without care. Ika sighed. "You just saying that because I caught you napping? If the boss found you napping, he was going to dock your pay." That is how stingy their boss was. The man had a policy of no work, no pay. Even if you were on leave, you get a reduced pay. It didn't matter if you were sick or not. At least it was better for them who did night shifts. Working during the night was a bit dangerous and stressing, so their pay was more than those who worked during day. And they didn't work longer hours, but they did more work and put in more money than those who worked during day, hence a heavier paycheck. "You know I worry about you," Naruto said, still smiling, and he knew she was violated a lot, possibly due to her beauty. "Perhaps you're worried about others touching what you feel belongs to you." A small playful smile played on her face. Men were rather possessive on their women. You would never see a man, unless mentally ill, allowing another man to touch his woman. But they had no troubles in trying to grope other women while theirs is sitting alone at home. "Well, there wouldn't be anything wrong with that," Naruto responded with his smile. "I mean, a man must look after his interests, and I don't share my body with any girl, so neither should you be touched by another man." "You don't share?" She looked bewildered by his statement. "Naruto, how many times have I stopped you from taking girls to your apartment? And need I remind you that Tuka-chan left after she woke up in your bed, with you and naked? Nothing happened. I've told you about that. We were both wasted to do anything, and you know it isn't my style to be a whoreman. I just like to play around a bit. I respect myself too much to be sleeping around with random women," Naruto defended himself. Well, it was the truth, regardless of how it looked like. "Whatever you say, Naruto," Ika said, walking away from the counter to take the beers, which were no doubted being waited upon by those who ordered them. Naruto's eyes followed her like a hawk watching prey as she walked towards one of the dimly lit areas within the 2-floor bar. Although she wouldn't say out loud to him in fear of losing her job for ratting out customers, Naruto knew what happened. He sighed when he saw a hand hitting her left butt. The tension all over her body was clearly visible even from here. Naruto closed his eyes for a moment. "I guess it is time to play the man." The man was needed in this kind of place, or otherwise female staff members would be raped day and night without anyone to do anything. Part of his self-appointed job was to ensure that no such thing happened and women were treated with the respect they deserved. Forcing your way into a woman was despicable, and it sickened him to see men do it each time the opportunity presents itself. "Please, let me go," Ika said to a man who was forcefully holding her left butt. She was also fighting with his right hand, which was moving on towards her chest. "See, come on, bitch, I know why you want me to do it," the man slurred, clearly drunk. Being called a bitch wasn't a surprise at all. She has been called far worse than that in her life. Even if she was treated like a whore, she wasn't going to cry and quit her job, not while she needed it. Please, she wasn't going to do anything to cause a scene. The owner didn't seem to be against groping, unless it was close to raping. The man somewhat permitted sexual harassment, and there was the rule she was told the first day she got here. The customer is always right, and her desires must be met to ensure that he leaves this place satisfied. Naruto was the only one who caused scenes with customers. He wasn't even afraid to bitch slap a customer if he was doing something intolerable. Someone else would have been fired already, but Naruto had his way with the owner. They also got along quite well, despite Naruto's blatant dislike of the man's morality. Lack of rather. "Be bitch, I am paying here. The least you see can do if offer why your serve." He was cut off when Naruto removed his hand from Ika. The blonde then hung his right hand over Ika's shoulder, bringing her closer to him. The tension in her body disappeared, just like that, and she relaxed down for a moment to gather her breath. Naruto only smiled at the drunk. Ika hadn't actually seen him without a smile. Even when he was in a troublesome situation, his smile was always by his side. But when he spoke, his tone was just toneless. "Is there a problem, customer-san?" "Huh? Who are you?" the man questioned, staring straight at Naruto's face, which was barely visible of the lack of adequate light in the corner. A look of recognition phased through the man for a moment before his right hand dug into his right pocket. A sharp knife lit as it raced towards Naruto's chest. Ika's body tensed again in the face of the sharp object. It was a reasonable reaction. If Naruto wasn't being careful, he would be pierced by the knife. Naruto pulled the woman closer to him, pressing her body against his gesture to tell her he was still here and everything would be alright. Naruto's left hand caught the wrist of the man who attempted to cut in a sloppy slash. His hold on the wrist was tight, very tight. Evidence of this was given when a look of pain passed the expression of the unruly customer. The firmness of Naruto's hold was also keeping him from moving any further. "Customer-san, this is my woman," Naruto started calmly, while a small smile played on his face. I'd appreciate it if you didn't bother her any further. I am sure you wouldn't like me to violate your woman. Be bastard, the customer glared as he felt like Naruto was threatening to violate his woman. But the blonde wasn't, he had merely stated a fact. Are you saying you're going to make a move on my girl? Despite the pain shooting through his hand, he still spoke like he felt nothing. The ruckus behind them just continued as though nothing was happening. The sound of the slow music just continued to fuel the thirst for more uncivil laughters and more orders of beers. Naruto shook his head at the accusation. Not at all, he said. He loosened his grip on the man. Customer-san, I will need you to take a nap to burn the alcohol you've consumed. Who a quick chop at the back of his head, and the customer's head slammed down the table as the chain's unconsciousness binds him to a forceful sleep. Aika released a breath of relief as Naruto loosened his hold on her. It wasn't for the first time she had seen him do something like this. Whenever customers went for the disruptive mode, Naruto always managed the situation by knocking them out cold. He said it was better than throwing them out, as they would either victimize someone else, or become victims themselves. You alright? Naruto asked. Aika nodded. I need a drink. She was familiar to this kind of behavior, but she didn't accept it, and she would never. Her body wasn't a doll put on display for everyone passing by to ogle and grope as they saw fit. Naruto smiled. Come, I will give you the Uzumaki combo, the blonde said, taking her left hand to drag her towards the counter. Once they walked past the unorganized tables and chairs, Naruto walked behind the counter as Aika settled for a stool in front of the counter. Naruto mixed the drinks before bringing a saucer for Aika. Don't drink too much while on duty. The night is still young, he said with a smile. They weren't allowed to drink while on duty, and the owner would be pissed if he saw any of his staff members drunk during working hours. Library. Magic is the physical embodiment of the spirit, in which mages use to bring about the abilities into reality. This ability is the physical and tangible form of the magic that lies within mages. Although it is possible that everyone is born with magic, only a select have the capability to use it, as it requires great concentration and one to be able to focus on the inner spirit to be able to channel it. Magic can also be taught. This example is seen with how dragons have taught humans the ancient magic of dragon slaying. Some great wizards are also able to transfer their magic into others. It was the same with chakra, even if he could do it with chakra, though it required great control over one's magic. Hence only the strong are able to transfer it to someone else. The kind of magic within one determines the kind of mage one will become. There are various types of magic in the land of Fiori, and throughout the continent. No one chooses which type of magic they wish to have, as no one chooses which family they want to be born in. But it is possible to learn other types of magic, just as it was possible for him to master all 5 main elements after intense training, and training by shadow clones that could be worth more than 50 years. The greatest wizards are those who have mastered their own magic to a level that far surpasses others. Greater magical power means the greater chance a mage can become stronger. This was a simple outlook of magic Naruto could give. He could say that magic, in a matter of speaking, was just like chakra. However, the thing with magic was that it wasn't fundamental to the survival of humans. If a shinobi suffered from complete drain of chakra, then death reigned. Chakra held the life force of all shinobi, and it was also the source behind all the jutsus they perform. This world was, in a way, alike to the elemental nations. But things were a bit strict, since there were those big guns in the form of the Magic Council which regulated all magical activities. There was no such thing in the shinobi world. There was no one who oversaw the use of chakra by shinobi. They used chakra in any way they pleased. The only limitations that were set was when it came to kinjutsu. But even so, there was no legal punishment that was dealt to anyone who used kinjutsu. In this world, what those people said was forbidden. Their word was law, and they did everything in their rights to exercise their power and authority. Perhaps if he had trained to attain his power to work on a different method, he could have created something like the Magic Council. It wasn't that he regretted his choice. No, not even a little did he regret it. Naruto sighed as he closed the book he was reading. He was sitting behind a small table within a public library at capital of Fiori. There were also a few more tables and a chair around him in the double-floor library, but it was often empty, unlike other libraries. The library was a bit close to the royal castle. To be able to understand a bit more of this world, he had decided to study it a bit more by reading books. He didn't like reading when he was younger, but since he became obsessed with peace, he'd taken reading as a joy and actually enjoyed the quietness he felt whenever he was at a place like this, focusing all his mental prowess on deciphering whatever that was said in a cryptic message in the books he read. He chose the capital because it was the only place where the Magic Council didn't snoop around too often. He didn't want to get in trouble with them. He had just been living a simple life since he came here. Nothing troublesome was done, and he actually enjoyed the peace. Perhaps he had been truly brought into this world to get a chance to live a second life, but in a bit happy way than the last. The shinobi world had many things that gave him sleepless nights. It had to start from the people in Konoha, to the loathing the shinobi world held for him. There wouldn't be peace for him there. But here, he didn't have to look on his shoulder. He didn't have to worry about the bounty on his head. He just enjoyed a simple life here. Sorry to keep you waiting, Naruto. The blonde looked up and saw the green-haired princess of Fiori. It is quite alright, princess. I was busy with something else, so I didn't even notice that you were late, he said politely. Meeting with the princess had been pure accidental. Well, if he believed in fate, then he could say that it was that thing which loves to screw with people that brought them together, or at least had their paths to collide. He'd met her a bit about 6 months ago, in this same library. It was actually a surprise to him to bump into the princess in the public library, but she said she preferred this one because she got some air to breathe without anyone pestering her. Flashback. He blamed Jiraiya for influencing this obsession into his life. Even in the second life, he was still obsessed with reading, the chore he detested more than anything during those academy days when he was stupid as hell. Back then, he was reading so that he could understand the shinobi world a bit more, so he could bring out his own answer for peace. But here he was studying for different reasons. The first being that he had to kill boredom. His life wasn't full of bliss from all corners, it was just a regular boring life of an ex-shinobi who wasn't familiar with the people around the capital. Another matter that fueled his boredom was that he only worked during the night, as he did night shifts. He had about 4 to 6 hours to sleep every day from 4 to 10 a.m. So even if he worked all night, he would still have the whole day to rest. Unless the bar was short of workers, he didn't work during day, he had the whole day for himself. Mostly it was boring since he couldn't exactly say that he had any friends to hang out with. The library provided everything for him, as he could understand a bit more of this world through reading old books. Who knows, maybe he could find something that relates to what has happened to him. Reading also gave him the knowledge he needed about magic and other subjects that interested him. Of course, being that he was a seal master during those glorious days, he found creating seals to be a joy, and he savored those moments. He didn't rush whenever he was doing a seal. No, he always did things at a leisurely pace. And that was driving some perfection complex inside of him. Given that he had more time to prepare and plan, it meant that his finished products were flawless. Currently, he was pushing a stack of 10 sizable books which he wasn't even going to read, he would only browse for what he wanted. It wasn't novels he was reading after all. The books just seemed interesting enough, and he could read some and borrow some to read while in the comfort of his small apartment. Naruto's head turned to his left side while he continued walking straight. His eyes spotted a beautiful green-haired girl. He worked in a bar selling alcohol to different kinds of people. He has seen many women, beautiful of all kinds. But this one was quite unique. Perhaps it was because he couldn't see past the alcohol they were always consuming, and he hadn't been working for more than a week. He stared at her from head to toe. His surrounding became lost to him as he continued to stare at the green-haired young woman. She was petite and had light green hair that reaches down her shoulders with 2 stands that frame her face and reach down her shoulders. She was wearing a short white dress that exposed her back and parts at the sides of the skirt, a large necklace with a large pendant, and a pair of earrings with 2 large gems in both of them. The sight of such beauty made him lose focus, and he couldn't help but stare. Hijui stopped walking, causing her guard to look at her to ask what was wrong. But he quickly noted what had stopped her from her movements. He frowned when he saw the look a blond young man on the side was giving the princess. Despicable, he thought. If it wasn't because the princess was so kind, he would have walked over to the boy and straightened him up for giving the princess such a despicable look. In front of Naruto, there were tables and chairs, used for studying. On his right, there were bookshelves, and Hijui was on his left. He didn't seem to notice the table that was in front of him, and the books he was carrying were obviously obstructing his front view. His eyes were also focused on her. He also seemed like had lost sense of his surrounding, like he was on his little world. When he noticed that she had seen his sly gaze, he smiled at her. It was a rather beautiful smile, if she could say. Her eyes looked at the small table in front of him, and she looked at him again. He didn't seem to notice. Really, he was so high, and in the air and fawning at her with that look on his face. The result in a matter of seconds was inevitable. Naruto hit the table that was just in front of him. The books on his hands bundled all over as he flipped over the table and fell to the other side with his face. The part that hit the floor was his face, while the other parts of his body, his feet, were left hanging over the table. It was pretty hilarious, especially given the look he was giving her, no doubt trying to woo her with that smile of his. Hijui couldn't help but giggle at the sound of his face hitting the floor. She shouldn't have laughed, but she couldn't help herself. Even her guard seemed to see the amusing part of this occurrence. That hurt, Naruto grumbled as he gathered himself from the ground. He placed his hand on his forehead, and breathed a sigh of relief when he found out that he wasn't scratched. It would have been horrible if his face was scratched. "Are you all right?" The voice was somewhat sweet and overflowing with kindness. He could still trace some amusement in her tone at his predicament. Naruto looked at the green-haired with a sheepish grin. "Yeah," he said, picking up his books before placing them on the curse table that had tripped him. "You should take care of where you are going to," Hijui said with a small smile. "I do look carefully," Naruto said, smiling slyly. "I just couldn't help myself when my eyes gazed onto such exquisite beauty. I'd be inclined to believe that you're a princess because of such overwhelming beauty." Naruto moved closer to the girl and took her right hand and gave a bow before kissing it. "Forgive my staring." Naruto didn't see the irony in all these. Hijui actually smiled at the action. He sounded honest and seemed to be actually sorry. But then again, it could all just be a ploy. His hold on her hand was rather gentle though. The guard was in action at the act. "Get your hands off the princess." Naruto took a step back under the stern tone of the man beside the green-haired. He had been ignoring the presence of the man for now. His brow furrowed as he questioned. "Did you just say princess? Like a real princess? You're not from around here, are you?" And it is my first time seeing you here, Hijri stated, with a hand raised to silence her bodyguard. A regular at this library, huh? Naruto thought before shaking his head. No, he said. I only moved here a week ago. Hijri nodded. I am a real princess, she said with a small smile. Princess Hijri. Fiori. The Hijri? Naruto thought before going down on his knees. Forgive this fool's ignorance, my princess. As I said, I recently moved into the capital. I was not aware that it was Her Highness. I only thought it was just a young lady with dazzling beauty that was hypnotic to my sight. Hijri smiled. No one spoke to her like this, and her bodyguard was visibly twitching because of it. It is all right, she said, and Naruto stood up. She had noticed that he had been carrying one of the books that were in the subject as her research. Are you going to read all of them? Naruto smiled, scratching the back of his head. I will probably go through all of them. But not read the entire books. I just want to look at some chapters within the books. Any particular reason you're looking through dark magic? Hijri asked. It was rare to see people studying dark magic. Dark magic was considered to be a lost art since there weren't any practitioners, and it was somewhat forbidden. Naruto didn't lose his smile as he kept a poker face. I just want to learn what I can. Knowledge is power after all, he said. Well, he had no interest in practicing dark magic after all, so the only good and honest reason he could give was that he only wanted to gain some valuable knowledge about this world. Hijri smiled at him once more before walking away. Perhaps I might join you one of these days. The princess is always welcome to join me. Naruto gave a bow before he took his seat to read his books. Flashback end. This one as it was now, there couldn't be more than 5 people in the entire library that had more than 1,000 books about magic, history of the country, and the royal family. It was harmony around the capital, and the people didn't care much for reading about magic, nor even studying about it. You didn't even see too many mages within the capital like you did outside. Currently he and the princess were in a group study or paired together if you like. They were studying dark magic. Of course you couldn't study dark magic without any knowledge of the dark mage Zeref. Naruto didn't particularly have an interest in using dark magic. He was light, but gaining as much information as he could didn't hurt him, and this did well to kill time as he had nothing to do during day, unless he had to cover for someone at work. Still, I had assured you that I wouldn't be late, she said, taking her own seat across the small table. Naruto merely rolled his eyes in response. It was always like this with this girl. She liked to apologize a lot. She had the heart to make decisions that may sound cruel, and still had the kindest heart he'd ever seen from anyone in this world. It would be wrong to mistake the princess' kindness as naivety. No, she wasn't stupid. By far she was smart. Her inventions in magic were proof of her intelligence. Her kindness didn't make her gullible like it had done to him, and she was always looking to apologize and seek penance if she had done what was wrong. He liked that about her. This will not happen again, Hijri said, packing the books she brought with her in order. Naruto was the only one outside the royal family she could study with, and he was a lot more curious, and she liked it since he always did something to feed his curiosity. Studying dark magic wasn't without risks, especially if they were studying about Zeref. The only thing they did not step out of the line in doing was experiments on dark magic, that is with Naruto. She only shared her thoughts with him while he shared his to her, and they combined their thoughts. Once she returns to the royal castle, she is then able to experiment. Her father permitted her to have these meetings with Naruto since he contributed something to her researches, and his mind worked in a way she wouldn't think just by seeing him. Though he wasn't a genius, when it came to understanding the working of things, he was very good. Bringing an outsider to her home wouldn't suffice well, hence they only met around here. She wasn't using him by any chance. Their relationship was good, if she could say. She would be even willing to call him a friend, but they weren't too close on a personal level, but they got along just fine. This working thing was mutual. She just didn't involve him in her family dealings because she didn't have to. Like I said, it isn't much of a problem, Naruto responded with a small shrug of his shoulders. What kept you busy anyway? New experiments. That was the thing. Although she didn't get Naruto involved directly, he knew that she experimented a lot with magic. Well, she couldn't hide it from him, especially when he could come up with some simple, yet complex ideas. She could guess that this was owed to the fact that he was a seal specialist, and like drawing runes, this is the only magic he has shown to be capable of doing. His runes weren't so much for fighting though. Celestial spirits come from the spirit world through a gate which connects this world to the spiritual world. You could call the gate a portal that allows one entry into the spiritual world, or this world. But to be able to open this portal you must have a key. Since it is deemed that it poses physical harm to a human to travel through the dimensions, I have been exploring finer details into understanding what really is in between these worlds so that I can create my own gate. Naruto nodded and adopted a thoughtful look before he responded. I was looking through the possibilities of teleportation using runes/seals. Teleportation in simple terms is jumping from A to B, regardless of the distance, place, and time. With teleportation, I can erase my existence from here and materialize it to somewhere else. But if I am going to do that, I don't need just the power of the mind and body to withstand the process. There has to be something connecting A and B to make the teleportation successful. Point A can be me, then if I want to go to B, there has to be something in B that I can focus on and help my materialization. Without B, I can move from A, but end up nowhere. If we are saying that existence of the body dematerializes in point A, then if there is no specific point B, the pieces might never form again because there is no B that gathers them into a single place to materialize. When we are looking through dimensional travel, we can mix it together with teleportation. When you look at teleportation in that sense, you can say that from A to B you jump through space. In a more literal way, say you create a time travel or teleportation device. Coordinates of where you want to go must be imprinted in the device. The device will work as a mirror. If the device is here, and I want to send you to the castle, then I put you into the device, insert the coordinates. Once the coordinates are set, the device opens a mirror in that place before transporting you. Hijri was silent for a few words. There were many things that had to be researched first in order to create a teleportation device. They had to understand the fabrics of the world, understand space and time thoroughly. It would take many years to turn that into practical. Naruto could say it, but he didn't have the mind nor the skills to create something in the nature of a teleportation device. In simple words, are you saying that before we learn to travel through dimensions, we must learn to travel through the space of this world, by virtue of teleporting from point A to point B? Naruto nodded. It is an idea, he said before taking out a small scroll from his pocket. He tore out 2 pieces of paper, before putting away the scroll. He wrote something that Hijri couldn't read on both pieces. The words or numbers looked the same. Watch this, he said before pushing one piece towards her side. What is this, runes? Sort of, Naruto responded quietly and took out a small rubber before placing it on the piece of paper in front of him. He held a hand sign, before both pieces glowed on their drawings. The rubber vanished from the piece in front of Naruto, and appeared on Hijri's piece. Hijri widened her eyes. This is incredible, Naruto, she exclaimed with a large smile on her face. It was incredible. He had showed her a simple teleportation, and she wasn't even close to inventing something like that. This is a simple demonstration of teleporting through point A to B when both points are connected, and when teleporting something. Unfortunately, this is as far as I can go. I can't seem to move past this point. Every time I try moving something biological, all I get in B is blood. Hijri nodded. She expected there to be difficulties with the kind of magic. What if there is no B? Is it like how you said it? Both points are interchangeable. Point A can be B. The problem is when B is missing, Naruto said. He then tied the piece in front of him, and held a single hand sign. The rubber disappeared from Hijri's piece. But it didn't appear anywhere, it just disappeared. We can assume that the rubber is lost through space, Hijri said after seeing the rubber disappear before her. It would have proven to be quite the risk if it had been a person who was in point A. The person would have just disappeared from this world without a trace. Naruto nodded. There is a slight chance that it might have appeared somewhere, he said. The thing with this kind of teleportation is that you have to make sure that both points are working perfectly well. A slight miscalculation could produce disastrous results. I mean that if you're teleporting another person, everything has to be in check. If not, that person might not be whole when he/she materializes. Both point A and B are like mirrors. When you're standing in front of mirror A, mirror B will reflect what is in A. But if either of the mirrors has a cracks, the image reflected in B will also have cracks. Say of example, mirror B can only reflect half of the image because mirror A is broken in half. Then there is a possibility that half of the person will be materialized in B and the other part remains behind. Or it could be teleported to another place. I have yet to test this theory yet. That is just amongst the risk factors I brought up as possibilities when using this kind of magic. Hijri looked at the piece in front of her. If she could understand this magic, and be able to apply it, a whole lot of things would be easy and it would save time and countless jewels used for transportation. This is really good, Naruto. I bet people would pay thousands of jewels to get their hands on this kind of magic. Magical artifacts didn't come by cheap in magic shops, so if they could get their hands on something so practical, mages would flock in to purchase. I imagine so, Naruto said. He didn't really care much for having millions of jewels with him. Working on runes or seals was something he did purely because he enjoyed it. He had developed the liking to seals during his glory days, and it sort of made him feel closer to his parents and the Uzumaki clan. You don't seem to be too thrilled about it, Hijri noted. For someone who worked in a bar, she'd imagine he would take jewels wherever they came from. The wages of a barman weren't that much. But then again, Naruto lived a standard life. Naruto shrugged his right shoulder as he responded. I have no desire for fame or being rich. While there is a saying that every man can be bought with the right price, I assure you, no one can afford my price. Not even the Princess of Fiori? Hijri questioned with a certain look. Naruto smiled. Not even the princess, he said lightly. But I am sure I would be able to work something out with the princess, she the daughter of the king after all. And on top of that, she has a killer smile that leaves me breathless whenever these eyes of mine fall upon it. I am sure if she came up with one of those, discussions for the price wouldn't last for a second without completion. A rather sly smile was planted across his face. Flirting with the princess? Naruto didn't seem to mind doing it. Well, he was a lively person and honest. It was rather refreshing to hear such comments since no one makes them to her. She is not fond of hanging out with boys and her father wouldn't allow it anyway. Still, she was rather occupied with her work to look at other things in life. For those reasons, she enjoyed these times with Naruto. Perhaps other than the fact that he helped her with her research and experiments by supplying likely theories. He was the only person outside the royal family she could share a laugh with. The princess might just bring her killer smile as she is very interested in your latest work. She would happily pay the price you request for working with you on such work, Hijui finally responded, with her warmest smile. Certainly, she would love to be involved in this kind of work. Naruto may relent and allow her to feast on his research. Hijui smiled before taking another look. Really, Naruto, I want to be involved in this kind of work. It will help me greatly with my research. I will give you all my notes with this kind of magic, Naruto said. If you look at my notes, you can work on something different. Thank you, Naruto. Hijui's look became thoughtful. I wonder what I can do to make it up to you. This will surely put my research further ahead, and it will be all thanks to you. Studying with me is already enough, princess. Besides, I'd like to see what you can do with my notes. If the princess can turn my work into something great, then I will be very proud. Naruto said. You'll give me for sure? She sounded a little bit too excited about the thought of getting the notes from Naruto. Naruto nodded. It would be wrong to bluff with the princess anyway. Besides, I had intended to give my notes to you anyway. Like I said, I believe you can take this practicality to a higher level and actually do something with it. I am just a barman who lacks the practical skills to create inventions you'd normally do. I also do not have the resources. I could make them available to you. It would be good to work on teleportation with you, and you understand these things better than I do. She didn't want to take anything from him, she wanted him to be involved as much as he would, like it was his idea after all. Naruto shook his head. It is well, the blonde shrugged. I have compiled the notes in a way that will make it easy for anyone to understand. Naruto paused for a moment before adding. We ended up going on the left, and time is ticking away. Well, you're still around here. It would be a horror if you were actually leaving any time soon. There is still much to do. Hijui said, smiling. Yeah, Naruto said with a small smile. He didn't know about it though. He wasn't planning on living the whole of his life in the capital. He thought of moving to another village far away from here, far away from trouble. He was here to attain some knowledge at the heart of the country. Perhaps if there was something to keep him here, he would stay without any complaints. A few moments of comfortable silence passed as both Naruto and Hijui were wrapped up in their thoughts. The silence was broken when Hijui spoke. I got all excited about your demonstration in teleportation, and I don't think I can focus on dark magic anymore. You're a little enthusiastic about this, princess, Naruto said with a small smile. What do you wish to do then? I have all day, and I've already read what I wanted. The books in here no longer interest me. I am thinking of taking a visit towards the magic library. There are tons of books there, and they hold more refined material. That wouldn't be bad, but I have all the books I'll need for my researches back at the castle. Ho? So the princess leaves the comfort of the castle just so she could be in the presence of Lil Olmi. I am touched. Naruto gave a wide smile before closing the book in front of him. I won't deny that I enjoy your company, but we do work more than anything. Besides, you're also here every day. I should be the one to say that perhaps Naruto is planning something for the princess. This is what made her day good. Without anyone to cheer her up, her mind would only be focused on work than anything. At least she could catch a breather with him. Well, we do get more work done, and since I don't have anything to do during the day, this is best. This compensated for his lack of friends. He did know some people at work, but he couldn't say he had any real friends from his workplace, well except for Aika. Why don't you get me those notes, so that I can look at them now while there is still time? We have about 2 to 3 hours before my next appointment comes in the evening. If she got them now, she could ask some questions on things that she didn't quite understand. My place isn't far away from here, Naruto said. I will go and fetch them for you. And leave me alone? Hijui asked. Naruto merely smiled in response. Well, I didn't think it would be appropriate to take the princess back to my place. My place isn't worthy for her highness' feet to grace. Enough with that, Hijui said firmly. I have known you for some time now and I haven't seen where you live. Who knows, maybe you don't live in a good place because of your job, and I might be able to thank you for all the insight you've given me. I may be a barman, but I don't really live in the cave as you'd think. My place is actually nice since I use my paycheck wisely and I don't have any other responsibilities. He did have some jewels when he came here after he did a simple job for someone. Since he didn't do anything luxurious and fancy, his pay was on food, rent and making his place better. He surely didn't want to be stuffed in a cave that would remind him of the hole he used to call home back in Konoha. Hijui stood up. Well, we will just have to see about that, now won't we? She wasn't going to back down, Naruto realized. He sighed before he too stood up. I will return the books to the shelves while you get your bodyguard. I haven't seen him since you came here, anyway. Is he busy with something? He returned to the castle, since it was safe with you. Are you sure about that? Naruto walked over to Hijui, before halting dangerously close to her. His face was just inches away from hers. I might just take advantage of the princess, and do something perverted to her while her bodyguard is not here. He gave the green-haired a somewhat perverted grin. You wouldn't. Just to be safe, the princess took a step back to create more distance. Behind her, there was another table, keeping her in place. Naruto had been a little too close for comfort, and it was a clear violation of her personal space, something he never does. Naruto smiled and closed the distance between them again. He allowed the princess to have some thoughts before move his head towards her left ear. His right hand was placed on her chin, massaging it. I don't know about that. Hijri's scent is quite intoxicating. The toxic is dangerous enough to make me lose my mind. If I lose my mind, I might just do something to her, he whispered down to her ear. Now, this was just daring. Hijri had noted that Naruto plays around with women, but their relationship wasn't like that. The tone he had used sent a few chills down her spine, and his touch on her chin was rather soft. Emotions she had never experienced began to well inside of her, and she didn't feel like hitting him for violating her personal space. Before Hijri could respond, the sound of a throat being cleared invaded their hearings. I leave you for a second with the princess, and you're already making a move? Naruto made the distance away from a slightly flustered princess. He smiled nervously. It isn't what it looks like. The kind of response he gave was just predictable. The ignorance of a god. Demon? God? Demon god? Naruto had been called by many titles, so many names. The glorious days in the elemental nations saw him lose much of his humanity to become a god, a demon, a messenger of death. The only thing that remained human about him was his relationship with Mei. Had it not been for the relationship with the Mizukage, he would have lost everything, including all his emotions. He killed for a living after all. There were so many things he did for power. He tortured his body many times during his hazardous training time. Kurama was always standing on the side with a needle of life once he did something ridiculous that ended with almost blowing his body apart. The Bijou was always working overtime to heal his self-inflicted wounds that would kill a normal person. Kurama's chakra had so worked within his system on a daily basis that it had become part of him. Inside his chakra system, the vile demonic chakra of the Bijou could be traced, mixing with his own. His body grew so much used to it that it no longer did him any damage as it was already in his system. Power was something he didn't lack. He had it in abundance. All that would not have mattered anyway. He would have eventually died sooner. 3 is a saying that everything has a price. The power he'd attained had cost him much of his lifespan. Despite having the Uzumaki genes and having the full power of Kurama inside of him, as well the Geto Mazo, it made no difference. He had put so much damage to his body during his training time that it reduced his lifespan by a great margin. His body couldn't keep wounds, but he got screwed by having his lifespan reduced each time he used Kurama's power to regenerate any damaged muscle. He tried working a few ninjutsu to work around the problem, but all he ever got was the middle finger. After the battle with Nagato, he'd taken the Geto Mazo and buried it inside of him in the depths of his soul. He thought that if he died with it, then the Jubi wouldn't be born again, and it would increase his lifespan. But nothing worked for his favor. The Geto Mazo only stopped his body from showing signs of reduced lifespan. To be more precise, it stopped him from aging quickly, but it didn't change the reality. He was just wearing a genjutsu just like Tsunade did. That was the cost of the godly power he'd attained. Though he wished to live a better life than the previous life, nothing much had changed here. He was still a god, at least no longer a demon. The power he holds makes him question why he was brought into such a world. If he had been brought into this world to live peacefully, wouldn't it be better for him to have been stripped of his power? It would have made sense if it was like that. Naruto sighed as he looked above the clear sky, standing on top of a tree, within a large mountain. It has been more than 6 months since he used the god magic, or even his chakra. It has been that long since he raised his hand in preparing for a fight with someone. The environment he lived didn't need him to use any of that magic, and he enjoyed all the time that was available to him to read and develop better seals. He wanted to do some conditioning before moving on to solve problems. He was certain that he would be required to lift his hands, and as much as he was proud of his power, he had his pride to maintain. It would be an insult to his pride if he was embarrassed by mere evil mages. He was God after all. Naruto jumped down from the tree and landed down the ground. A clone puffed into existence beside him before it jumped away from him. I require something a bit serious, Naruto said to the clone. There are some tensions within my muscles. I want to relax them with a physical exercise. The clone looked up for a moment before it responded, this is a good place. It is away from civilization. We won't have anyone spying on us or interrupting our exercise. Naruto nodded. I specifically chose this place because of it, and the target is only a few hours away, when traveling through shinobi speeds. He didn't need to take a train to travel when he could move faster than the damn thing. He was used to running anyway, and it didn't hurt to see how his speed had dropped. The clone snapped its neck before disappearing in a blur, but it suddenly disappeared in a puff of smoke. Naruto sighed. This world certainly had a way of ruining things for him. Just when he thought he could get some free time, something appears in his radar. He wasn't looking for trouble, or any sort of problem to solve other than Ika's, and so he decided to stand still. A few minutes passed and Naruto waited, and waited, until birds started filling the sky in numbers as heavy footsteps crushed down earth, knocking down trees in the side. Whatever it was that was coming towards him, it was coming fast and no doubt was big. The footsteps grew louder by the second and the sound of trees being knocked aside increased as Naruto continued his silent standstill. A large beast blew out from behind him and went straight at him. Judging by its look on the eyes, it wasn't expecting to see him nor had it sensed his presence. It had to be expected as he had been keeping a steady flow of his magic while focusing his senses on the danger that was coming from behind him. Despite its surprise at seeing him, the large beast didn't stop on its path. It continued to run straight him. Naruto still didn't make a move. He simply watched the beast move towards him in great speed. For something so big it was way taller than him. He could probably reach just above its knees. It moved a lot faster than one would expect. The beast's large right claw formed a fist, and it was sent straight him. Naruto quickly placed both his hands in front of him to form a defense from the large punch. Upon connecting with his hands, the punch sent the blonde sailing away towards the trees. Naruto broke through a few trees before he finally hit the last tree as the momentum forced by the powerful punch had lost its course. Naruto winced as he slid down the tree trunk. His back hurt like crap, and if that punch had really hit his chest, he would have surely spat out some blood. The beast hit way harder than he'd anticipated. He'd come across a Vulcan, but it didn't hit this hard, and wasn't powerful as this monster. Once the blonde hit the ground, he looked up again as the beast was again charging towards wherever it was going. Naruto was still on its path, and judging by the look on its eyes, it didn't take that highly of him. The beast was upon him in a matter of seconds. This time, it threw a left punch at the blonde. Naruto again placed both his hands in front to block the punch. He had forgotten that behind him was a tree he didn't break after he was sent sailing. When the punch connected with his defense, it pushed him back, but Naruto hit the tree trunk behind him by his back. The beast threw another right punch at the blonde in blurring speed. Naruto avoided the punch by moving to his right side. The beast's punch crashed through the tree trunk, breaking the poor tree in half under its might. Naruto was just glad he had dodged that one, or it would have hurt him. Standing a few feet away from the beast, Naruto asked, "Who are you?" Every world had its talking animals. When he had first seen a talking frog toad, he had been greatly surprised since he hadn't been familiar with summons before Jiraiya showed them to him. This world had its own beasts and animals that spoke. He wasn't even surprised when he first saw a beast speaking. What could surprise him if he had seen speaking slugs, snakes and monkeys? Vulcans spoke, though their attitude was very annoying since they were filled with arrogance. They reminded him of a younger Sasuke and Kiba. The beast didn't respond, it merely growled before charging away from him. Naruto held out his right hand and blue magic seal appeared around the beast's waist. The seal kept the beast in place and from moving any further. It was a simple binding seal that Naruto had applied. It was obvious that the beast was going to make way from him after punching him. Now that was something he couldn't accept even though he wasn't looking for trouble. "That is just being rude," Naruto said, looking offended as he walked towards the beast. "You don't just suddenly attack someone and then hit the ground like that, not without even saying a word." There was still no response as the beast struggled to break free from his seal. Naruto was now wondering if the beast could even understand him. It certainly didn't look like it was listening to him. Naruto snapped his attention behind. Eyes narrowed, he could feel another presence, and it felt somewhat sinister. The demonic feeling made all the warmth in his eyes a memory and all his senses working at full power. He wasn't used to such a feeling in this world, but he did know that there were types of magic who could make such a feeling, not necessarily making one evil. The beast finally broke free from its bind, and snapped at Naruto. Its right punch cleaved through the air as it sped towards Naruto with tremendous speed and power. The blonde still had his attention focused on the other presence. Even so, when he was not even looking, his right hand was raised high, palm open, and the large punch collided with it. Naruto didn't move, not even an inch, much to the evident surprise and shock of the beast. The ground beneath him wasn't so lucky though. It shattered under the tremendous force of the punch. Another blue magic seal formed between Naruto's palm and the punch of the beast. A shot of light blue lightning traveled through the beast in a heap of static. The beast let out a shrill of pain as the lightning consumed its hard body from the inside. The beast jumped away from Naruto to cut the flow of the electricity into its body. A smoke like that coming from burned meat started to seep out of the beast, signifying just how much pain Naruto had made it suffer. He hadn't used a simple spell, and it would have probably left a normal human with burn marks. Considering that he didn't have full control of his magic, anything was to be expected from his spells. Naruto looked away from the new presence and looked at the beast. "Your skin is very tough. I doubt I can even put a mark on you with just a normal spell. Against someone else, physical attacks also won't do any good." The beast didn't respond, it again charged at him. But this time, it appeared to be furious over his last spell. It was also moving a lot faster than before. Still Naruto didn't flash away from his position. He raised his right hand and a blue round, magic seal appeared before shooting a beam of blue energy straight at the beast. The beam hit the beast straight on the chest, but it made no difference as it continued to move on towards him. Naruto was forced to duck under a right swing that would have surely disconnected his head from his shoulder if it had hit him straight on. The beast tried to squash him under its right foot after missing, but Naruto flashed a few feet away from it. The large foot crushed the ground mercilessly. Standing still from a few distance away, Naruto clasped his hands together, lightning ecstasy, he muttered before around 11 magical seals surrounded the target. All seals sparkled blue lightning before they all shot electric currencies at the surrounded beast. It was no different than saying that beast was thrown into a pit of intense flames. The result was a loud shrill that tore through the forest before the beast finally stopped and collapsed, but not before changing into a human. Naruto cancelled his spell, but even when the spell was cancelled, some electric current continued to sparkle around the fallen human. A white-haired young lady then landed on the ground a few feet away before rushing over to the fallen human. I wouldn't touch him if I were you, Naruto stated calmly. I need to check for his pulse, came a quick response from the white-haired. Electricity is still flowing within his body. If you touch him, it will shock you, Naruto said. Besides, if you really thought I was going to kill him, you would have stopped me while my spell was still active. The white-haired turned to face the blonde before asking, Who are you? Take over magic, I see, Naruto said. I presume he had lost control after a full-body takeover and you'd been chasing after him. The blonde didn't wait for the white-haired to respond, he went on. To answer your question, Mage-chan, I am Naruto. The blonde smiled once more before turning around to leave. Wait. Naruto didn't say anything. He seemingly vanished into the trees. A second later he returned. I thought I sensed something, he muttered as he walked towards the white-haired mage. You're the one who felt demonic. It was by no means a question. It was a clear statement. The girl looked him silently as though she was trying to figure something out. She didn't say a word until Naruto walked past her and kneeled down on the side of the former beast he had electrocuted. What are you doing? Her voice was somewhat stern. Dispelling all the static in him so that he can wake up and you can go. I imagine that it would be a task for you to carry such a big fella all the way home, Naruto responded before placing his index finger on his forehead. Lightning sparkled around his finger as it gathered there. He then pointed his finger to the side, releasing all the lightning he had absorbed. Thank you, the female stranger said, now standing just beside him. Naruto smiled at her as he stood up. Don't mention it, he said. He should be awake in a few minutes. I doubt he will be able to walk though. In any case, drink this and attach this to his forehead. When he wakes up it will restore his magic. Naruto produced a small bottle of water and handed a small piece of paper to the girl. What is this? She asked, looking at the bottle curiously. It is just plain water, Naruto responded with a smile. There are a number of mages coming from the direction which you came. Would they be friends or hostiles? Friends. Excellent, he seemed relieved. Take care, Mage-chan. I will take my leave now. He bowed a little before disappearing with the winds that picked when he bowed. This is something you don't see every day, the woman thought. A complete stranger helping her out then disappear without demanding anything else. Well, she could say that he was forced to attack because the beast had attacked him out of nowhere. She did wonder who he really was and what he was doing in a large forest like this all by himself. He didn't seem bad, but he was surely strong. Naruto appeared a considerable distance away from the forest. He had sped through the forest in great speeds for about 2 hours. That meant that he covered a lot of distance between him and the white-haired stranger. They couldn't track him down now since they couldn't catch him, and he left no trace of his presence at the forest. He was currently walking slowly in the outskirts of the river village, walking towards the greenly forest where his target was located. It took him 4 days to finally locate these people. Aika wasn't so much forthcoming about their locations, so he only had clues to work. But with the help of his clones, the time and distance didn't matter much. All he had to do was disguise and have them search for the group he needed. 4 days gone, and all sources pointed at this forest. Not many people had the joy of coming into such a forest. But Naruto wasn't just many people. He was a man on a mission. He had walked through scary and frightening territories in the quest for knowledge, and nothing much really scared him. Well, he was the demon god after all. What could scare the man who had no equal in the elemental nations? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. With 4 days gone, he had more days to spend at the library while looking through many things that would interest him. A week was a long time for one like him who had clones to divide tasks. He could turn a week-long reading into a year-long reading with a few clones. Ah, he so loved his clones. Naruto entered the forest and continued walking silently. His steps finally came to a halt when he saw a large building, about 4 stories high, standing tall in front of him. This must be the place, he thought. There was no sign of dark Sith anywhere, but that didn't deter him. If his intel led him to this place, then this was the right place for him to visit. The blonde sighed. This was surely going to be troublesome. Being diplomatic surely didn't work that well. When these kinds of people see that you're willing to bleed, they will keep cutting you until your body can't produce any blood. He had seen such people, and he knew that giving the devil a hug was another way of telling it to stab you on the back while you were lost in its cold comfort. Still, for his conscience and to avoid doing what he would deem to be wrong, he still had to try. It wasn't his policy to dismiss people on the first sight of seeing their evil. He had to give a chance. Everyone deserved at least that much at least. He held a single hand sign and a large bag appeared in a puff of smoke on his right side. Naruto picked up the bag before walking towards the entrance of the large building. He didn't even know when he went through the double doors. Just when he was about to open them, they suddenly opened like there was some kind of motion sensor that sensed his movements, and the mechanism supporting the sensors pushed the doors to open. Naruto showed no fear though he just went through the doors with the black bag firmly on his right hand. Once he entered the building, he was greeted by a large hall. It was noisy. There was some noise inside the hall, and the stench of alcohol reeked throughout the walls of the hall. Tables and chairs were filled with men sharing bitter laughs, and tales that had no proof of existence. Lies. There was not a single woman in the hall, it was all men. Naruto's presence was quickly noted with an eerie silence that settled in the hall as soon as he dropped the heavy bag of gold the wooden floor. This is what they call dark Sith. It wasn't a question, but someone interpreted it like it was. Who wants to know? The man who questioned was standing behind the counter. He watched Naruto carefully. The intruder had wild blonde hair that framed down the sides of his face. A few bangs covered most of his forehead, reaching just above his clear blue eyes. His attire consisted of a tight long-sleeved crimson shirt, a black short-sleeved coat. It was long, reaching just above his ankles. The coat was tattered at the edges like an old cloth, and it was also decorated with a red flame pattern. He wore slightly skinny black pants, black shinobi boots. Me, Naruto responded calmly. Can I speak to the boss if he is? Naruto trailed off when his eyes caught the presence of a man he had seen before. His expression became stern. You, the man in question growled, bastard. That was what he was, to him anyway, and he would give anything that see Naruto killed, anything he can afford, that is. He'd never been so disgraced and humiliated in his life before he came around, and even today, he would never admit to anyone what he did in order to secure his survival. You know this idiot? All eyes looked at the man as he nodded. He is the one that busted up my branch, the man simply said before staring down at Naruto. This revelation did nothing but make the other men turn their attention on the blonde. Their eyes stared at him with cruel intentions. No doubt if they were connected with the guild he had destroyed, they would seek revenge. Even some evil people did care about their comrades and properties. However, what was more important to such people was the disrespect Naruto showed when he destroyed one of their branches. If he had destroyed one of their houses, then they would seek to destroy his own house and screw his life over just to get even. I see you returned to this kind of life even after I spared your life, Naruto stated. He was only staring at the man he had sparred. This man had practically begged for his life. He had literally cried while singing some sorry, I won't do it again songs and swore he would change his ways if he allowed him to live. Being a good person as he was, he permitted it. It was because the man had cried, looking pathetic. He was not cold-hearted enough to put that way and destroy everything on his path. This man had only been involved in demanding payment to the village he'd stayed in for a couple of days for protection. They had stationed their guild outside the village and protected it against outsiders, and in return, they made the villagers suffer. The others he'd punished were doing despicable things that couldn't be forgiven. But here was now, looking at the same man. It wasn't even a coincidence that this man was somehow involved with the people that were making Aika bleed. If he hadn't met Aika, no, if he hadn't moved to the capital, then he wouldn't have seen this man. He wouldn't even have been forced to do something like this because he wouldn't have met Aika. But he was led to this place, and facing a man he'd sparred for doing evil. Was this some plot by some screwed-up god to prove him wrong? Was this to prove to him that evil was evil? Not at all, a voice responded within Naruto's head. Naruto was more accustomed to hearing voices inside his head that he didn't fail to realize it. It was definitely coming from his head, and it was unfamiliar. Who are you in my head? You're not Kurama, are you Kami? Not at all, the voice sounded amused by the question of Kami. I myself question if beings as gods truly to exist. Who are you then? You won't listen to anything I say before I tell you what you want to know. Naruto could swear he saw a head shaking in resignation. I am not God. In your world you have legends such as the Jubi and the Sage of Six Paths. In this world I am like the Sage of Six Paths, though unlike him or Zeref, I am an unknown factor. I never existence to the people of this world. I am just an ancient spirit lost in time. Naruto's eyes narrowed and his whole posture became slightly tense. This voice wasn't of God, but it knew about him. This wasn't something that he had told anyone, either Aika nor Hizui. He didn't even dream about it. When it came to such a topic, it never left his mouth. What do you want? It's been almost a year and a half since you died and came to this world. I have been trying to get in contact with you, but the circumstances were never right, especially when you didn't think about bad people. I am what brought you to this world, though I merely took advantage of the situation caused by an overflow of power between your soul, Kurama, and the Geto Mazo, which you had buried deep inside of your soul and thought nothing of it after that. What do you want? Naruto repeated. Got to Tenru Island, you will find Zeref there. I will leave the coordinates of the island with you. After you have done so, come and have a chat with me at the ancient ruins. I would advise that you don't take much time. I don't have too long before my existence disappears to bring you into this world. I sacrificed my own existence. Zeref is dead, Naruto said. The Dark Mage is said to have lived about 400 years ago, and he shouldn't be alive. Well, unless he was immortal. Immortality wasn't something he would consider to be a shock when he dealt with an immortal beast every day during the glorious days. But if Zeref has been alive all along, why doesn't anyone know of it? There was no response to his statement. The voice had disappeared from his head. He had really died in the elemental nations. That wasn't a shock, though. He had known that he was going to die, and he had died. There was some truth in Kurama's last words after all. The Geto Mazo wasn't supposed to be a factor since he'd buried it before his last battle. He wasn't its Jinchuriki. He had just buried it inside of him. Of course he had access to its power, but all calculations showed that it was supposed to perish along with his soul, unlike Kurama. Then what could have happened? To keep the balance of things, in order to revive someone, you had to sacrifice your own life. There was such a technique in the shinobi world, but it was forbidden, though you didn't have to make a sacrifice with the rinnegan. It took chakra and weaving hand signs to bring the dead to life. Someone else had sacrificed for him to be here. For what purpose, he wondered. He had a hard time believing that Zeref was alive, but he knew himself too well to know that he didn't hallucinate, and that voice had actually spoken to him. A punch straight on the gut smashed Naruto out of his thoughts. The blonde had become so lost in his thoughts that he actually forgot about his surroundings. The punch was a nice touch to bring him out of his thoughts. Idiot, we talking to you? The man who punched him snarled, glaring at him. Naruto smiled, making the man scowl. Sorry, I was lost in thought, the blonde said a little apologetically. Can I speak to the boss of this place? I am the boss. The man who responded was standing in front of him. He was wearing a dark hooded coat, black leather boots. The black shirt he wore revealed his toned chest. No doubt the man trained hard, physically, and he was of a good build. He stood just slightly taller than Naruto. Naruto took out a picture of Aika. I brought gold to settle her debt, the blonde said. He unzipped the bag to show the stones of gold, before facing the boss again. I'm sure there isn't a problem with that. At the sight of the stones, the man's look became darker. A twisted smile spread across his face as he took the picture of Aika. Ah, I know this girl. She is one of our clients. His eyes went at the gold. Are those stones real? Naruto nodded, and took one out before handing over to the man. The boss held it for a few moments while the silent hall watched. The man smiled before snapping his fingers. All 30 members were on their feet, ready to pounce on Naruto. While this looks good, I'm afraid it can't over all her debts, the boss said. You'll have to bring 2 more of those bags, and then we can talk about settling the issue of overdue interest charges. Predictable. This was expected, Naruto sighed before smiling sadly. I don't know why I bother with you people. He had known it would most likely end like this, and yet he tried speaking to them anyway. He wasn't going to try any negotiations. They wouldn't yield any result. The fact that a man who had begged to be sparred was still living this kind of life was reason enough for him. Naruto shook his head. In a blur, the boss was sent sailing towards his men after a fast right punch from Naruto. The punch had hit him straight on his face and hard enough to make him lose his hold on the gold stone he held. Naruto caught the stone and placed it back on the bed before he made it disappear. Noise broke out when Naruto punched the boss and sent him flying. Once the boss recovered, he held his bleeding mouth before ordering his men to get the blonde. Naruto didn't listen to the curses that were sent flying towards him. Keep these fools from moving, gravity, he said while making fast movements with his index finger, which was glowing light blue energy. A large magical circle appeared above the group of evildoers, and another on the wooden floor. All the men fell down the floor on their knees as gravity pulled them down. Naruto turned around to leave. Get back here, bastard! The blonde ignored it, and walked out of the building before stopping on a good distance. He looked at the clear skies, sadly, and closed his eyes. He formed his resolve and clasped his hands together, while in deep concentration. Lightning God Justice, he said, keeping his hands clasped together. 3 large magical circles appeared above the large building, covering it entirely in width. The seals hovered like a pregnant cloud for a few moments before the 3rd seal, which was above the other 2, began to emit lightning. In a second, a wave of pure lightning crushed down towards the building. Naruto blinked, and when his vision became clear, the building was no more. Its existence had been removed. There was nothing but a larger crater from where the building once stood. Naruto heaved another sigh. My body is still not used to using this kind of magic. I guess I shouldn't have neglected my training. He could feel some strains on his body, despite the spell not being the most powerful of its kind. Training was needed to condition his body, but now was not the time for that. He had more matters to deal with. It was either he sent a clone to the library to do some reading while he traveled towards Tenru Island, or just forget about the library. As the voice said, the coordinates were left inside his head. Tenru Island. Naruto found out that getting into the island wasn't easy since he had to travel through sea first before breaking the barrier that concealed the island's visibility. Despite all his objections in coming into this place because he couldn't understand many things and the many questions that raised in his mind, he had forced himself to travel into this island, and it had taken him much more time than he had anticipated. He would be returning to Aika at a later date than first thought. As soon as Naruto landed on the island, he got the feeling that he wasn't wanted by something or someone. He could feel it inside him that something was watching him. Something was sending him a glare that told him to beat it because he was trespassing. But he'd been told to come here, and no matter what, he wouldn't leave without searching the entire land. Even though he continued to feel that hostile feeling, he wouldn't leave just yet. This was important to him, to his existence. Zeref was a main subject in most of the books he has read. Despite being a black mage, the man was a genius at work when it came to magic. If he had been a good person, he would have surely be the sage of 6 paths of this world. Many evil people revered his name, and some worshipped him. Well, he was the most powerful black mage to have ever lived. According to what Hijri told him, the mage is the one to have turned Acnologia, the dragon of apocalypse, into a dragon. Acnologia was another feared name. Naruto didn't think anyone in this time has seen the black dragon. But he didn't doubt that the dragon does indeed exist. Zeref led the word into chaos, nearly destroying it all. Then this man must have all the answers about the humans of this world. Still, he was an evil man. Could he stand that? This man was hailed as the most evil mage. What could stop him from trying to kill him once he does find him, if he is even on this island? What was he even doing here? If his reputation is true as it is written, then he should be causing havoc in this world rather than staying secluded. There were many questions. Perhaps this is why he even came here, to get the answers should the black mage be really alive, and if he's willing to share his story, well, they could boast about past glories. Zeref didn't lack anything to boast about during his days, and he plenty of stories to tell about his days as the demon god. Naruto finally found a human, after hours of searching. The human was just a young man. He didn't see any picture of the black maid Zeref to identify him. Even when looking at the expression on the youth, he couldn't say this was Zeref. But something in him yelled that this was the notorious black mage. Just to be sure, Naruto asked, "Might you be Zeref?" he asked, all while smiling at the youth. A smile defined his identity. He couldn't forget one since it was part of him. The youth looked at him calmly. He was leaning against a tree trunk, sitting down. He then stood up before responding. "What are you?" The expression of the youth had changed drastically from that of a somewhat depressed youth to a somewhat serious person. Naruto's brow furrowed at the question. It shouldn't have been phrased like that. Wouldn't it be better if you'd phrased, "Who are you?" The smile on his face never escaped. He wasn't insulted by those words. He knew who and what he was to be concerned with what people said about him. Zeref shook his head. "I didn't make a mistake," he said. "What are you?" "The moment you touched this island I felt that something was coming towards me, and when you reached me, I sensed something that made me regain control over my magic." "You're Zeref then," Naruto said. He wasn't expecting the dark mage to be like this. Physically, he looked like a mere youth, but that could be because of his immortality, meaning that he stopped aging. He had expected to something else, well, something not this. The questions in him flooded like floods caused an outbreak of sea waves. It was no doubt him, the man he had so learned much about. The man he had been tasked to seeing. Nothing much was said, but he was told that he should come to this island and he would see Zeref. Now he has what to do. Does he question the mage or just hit the road? The man looked serious enough by his presence, and he said some interesting statements. From what he saw before this and what he was seeing now, Naruto could say that not everything about this man was covered in books. There was a lot to this black mage than what people painted about him. It made Naruto curious, enough to drive the desire to sit down with the man to have a chat with him. "To answer your question, I am what I am, and I am who I am. By name I am Naruto Uzumaki," Naruto added. Zeref stared at him silently before walking towards him. He stopped just inches away from him, and two of his fingers were placed on Naruto's forehead. However, upon contact, a black mist surrounded Zeref while a white one surrounded Naruto before both exploded, separating the two. No harm was done. Both Zeref and Naruto were still on their feet, just a bit away from each other. "Your real magic nullifies some elements of my magic, while the same can be said for my magic. I didn't think that someone that strong would exist in this age. You don't really feel human. What are you really?" Naruto sighed before sitting down on the blades of grass around them. It appeared like he was going to have a civil conversation with the dark mage, and no one would be firing spells at him. The black mage before him didn't seem to be all evil as he read, but he couldn't mistake that feeling of raw dark power he felt when their magic collided. This man was as strong as the books said he was. Naruto looked at the mage calmly, losing his smile. "I am human, but I have been hailed as a demon, due to power and actions." Zeref returned to sitting beside the tree trunk while leaning against it. A warm breeze passed by, picking up a few fallen leaves. A few moments passed and everything settled down. The black mage was really surprised that such a thing could stand right in front of him. He couldn't say that this thing was a human. It may be dressed in human flesh, speak like a human, walk like a human, and smile like a human, but his senses told him this thing wasn't a human. He couldn't say it was a demon either. He hadn't met anyone or anything like it in all his long and miserable life. He had been sitting here, waiting for Natsu to grow and become strong enough to kill him. With everything that has happened, only Natsu could achieve such a feat. That is what he believed anyway. But looking at this pseudo-human, he couldn't say this thing couldn't match him. However, as it was now, it couldn't defeat him. But it could, if given full control of all that overwhelming demonic power he was sensing. Looking at its eyes, Zeref could say that they were somewhat alike. They had seen too much. They had seen many humans die. The interesting thing was that the mere presence of this thing was enough to force him out. It was like they were opposites, with a somewhat similar yet different past. It did say it was called a demon due to power and actions. But one thing he was certain of was that it didn't happen in this world, otherwise he would have known about it. This led him to one conclusion. "You're not from this world, are you?" The feeling that something was watching him didn't leave him. Zeref didn't seem to acknowledge or, either he couldn't see it. "We're not alone in this island, are we?" The fact that Naruto could feel her presence only confirmed some things Zeref thought of this person in front of him. Even he couldn't see her, but he could feel her presence, just as Naruto could. "No, there is also someone else." Naruto nodded, and then appeared thoughtful for a few seconds before he shrugged. "You're right, I am not of this world. I am from another universe. I don't really know much about how I came here, but it's been about 17 or 16 months since I've been here. An unknown factor into this age, could this be set to change the fate of the human world? Naruto was a new player that he did not count on to exist in this age, no one did. Everything was calculated before, and his calculations missed this person. A simple unknown factor could change many things, especially when it could directly interfere with things. But of course he had no plans to do anything, he just wanted to die. But if it couldn't be helped, then he would side with the annihilation of all humans. This person couldn't help him with understanding how he was able to come into this age, since he has stated that he doesn't know much about how he came here. Zeref wasn't going to waste time asking since he knew he wasn't going to get sufficient answers. He had one more question in this matter, a question that could explain a lot of things if the answer is good enough. Why did they call you a demon in your world? Your core power feels demonic, yet at the same time emits light. This was the Dark Mage, and it wouldn't kill him to speak to such a man. He had spoken to Hagoromo in his age, and that wasn't a shock. Speaking to a notorious legend of this world couldn't feel like a dream to him. My world was a shinobi world, a flawed world full of evil, greedy humans who sought peace during day but wore demonic masks during night to search for conflicts and indulge in them. This world had a violent history. Nations fought against each other over little things. Wars that served no purpose were fought, baptizing the world with blood and hatred. The results of a war are pain, suffering, and hatred. There is no real winner in a war. Everyone loses something, and in turn, men continue to breed hatred and nurse it like a loved infant. Hatred circulates with each battle, never ending. Humans became despicable creatures who contradicted themselves. In my world, children were sent to war to fight for their village. From a young, we were taught to kill in the pretense that we were being taught to protect our villages. My own ancestral home was annihilated simply because they were growing powerful to challenge the big dogs. The attack left only a few survivors from my clan and the village in ruins. What infuriated me the most was that this village was perhaps the most peaceful village in the shinobi world. My people didn't involve themselves in wars, they chose to remain in peace. But I held no grudge over the culprits. I was born in a village called Konoha, which was the strongest village in my world. During the night I was born, an immortal beast attacked the village. In this world, you could say a dragon attacked the village, killing many people. This wasn't just a normal beast, it was the strongest beast of all beasts that existed. My father, a leader of the Konoha, sacrificed himself to protect the village by sealing it inside of me. Unfortunately, my mother also died that night. As a result, I was left to fend for myself, with no one to call family. The ignorant fools my father died protecting hated my existence simply because the thing that killed their loved ones was inside of me. No, they didn't see it like that. I was the thing that made them suffer, a demon. The Kyuubi brat Naruto went on to tell the rest of the story. Zeref kept silence for a few moments while he absorbed everything. I still maintain my point. I can't call you a human. However, I will admit that you're much more human than I am, he said. Naruto shook his head. I wouldn't say I am better than you, he said. I understand some parts of your story. Why don't you share with me why you're in this island? I am an unknown factor after all, and I did tell you my story, Naruto finished with a smile. It can't be helped, Zeref said. I watched so many humans die, and I have come to see the value of human life, and I want to die to pay for all I have done. But if the situation comes, I will be forced to awaken and take an active role in this age. I don't need to explain to you why I find humans despicable. Nevertheless, I do wish to die before I do anything. In response, Naruto chuckled a bit bitterly. You're much more human than I am, he said. You regret your actions and wish to pay for them. But I killed so many bad people, and many innocent people with these hands of mine. Many innocent learned to hate, fight to kill because of me. Yet I don't regret it. I killed innocent people, and Atonement was to die. Though I died, I am still alive. I have fooled myself into living under the illusion of a second chance because I saved the shinobi world. I smile every day, while some have scars in their hearts because of me. Zeref wasn't going to offer any words of comfort, but he did respond. The difference between you and me is that you didn't do what you did because you were evil. You did what you did because you cared for your world and was willing to sacrifice some people to save it. Your actions were to unite people. He still did think that Naruto understood this better than he did. If not, he wouldn't smile. Naruto shook his head, not to reject Zeref's words, but to clear his mind. Every world has its own past and darkness, and as long as there are people trying to connect the past and the present, the combination will be a future of doom. I do wish I do not live to see that tomorrow. This was Zeref's words. But I sense that it is going to come anyway, and I will be forced to take action. An action that won't be good for humanity, Naruto said as he stood up. It was truly an honor, but I do hope I never see you again, not in a time when doom is at the door. I am not an ally of anyone, nor an enemy of anyone, but if Acnologia is summoned, we will see each other again, Zeref said before closing his eyes. Naruto didn't respond. He walked away, leaving the black mage alone. Zeref opened his eyes. This time, he looked sad. Will this world ever allow me to atone for my sins? He asked in a somewhat depressed tone. Naruto. There are so many days that Naruto has found himself staring at the royal castle for no particular reason. The royal family controlled Fiori. It was the government that controlled this country. Nations such as this in his world were often used to serve the needs of the king instead of the people. But this kingdom was a bit different. Naruto didn't see the royal family in a bad light. While he has not met the king, he has met its princess, Hizui. She was a light, the good thing, and if someone like her was able to live in this kingdom, then other people couldn't be so bad. For this belief, Naruto continued to just watch the royal castle. He had no interest in involving himself with its activities. Even when he had done a job to improve the royal guard's weaponry, he wished to be no part in any of the activities they did. He did wonder though, what would happen if things between the royal family and the Magic Council went south. The Magic Council didn't just end in fury, it controlled guilds and mages everywhere within Earthland. Obvious it held more power when it came to magic than the royal family. But what if the royal family was to seek that power? What would happen? They surely had the jewels to pay anyone to fight for their side. That is not to say the Magic Council was by any means without any money, but it would be interesting to see what would happen if something was to break out between the Magic Council and the royal family. If Kami was going to be forced to take part in the events of this world, he would always side with the royal family. To be more precise, Hizui. No matter what happened, even if the Magic Council sought after her for doing illegal experiments in dark magic, he would always side with her. She was the first friend he made in this world, and he would side her as long as she remains as Hizui. It's about time I went home, Naruto thought mildly before turning his eyes from the royal castle. He was standing above the rooftop of the public library. He had already sent a word to Hizui to see him just outside of the capital. He had to see Aika now. He still had ancient ruins to visit, and he didn't have to waste any more time. It would still be difficult to see Hizui though. He had met the black wizard, a mage. Hizui invested her time and efforts, and he wasn't going to tell her about it. No one was going to know from his mouth that Zeref was actually alive. He wouldn't say anything, not even when the Magic Council threatened to shoot him with their biggest weapon. Sighing, Naruto left the roof and took the busy streets towards his small apartment. Once he reached the place, he found it exactly as it had been when he left it. Aika didn't change a single thing. It pleased him though. He hadn't thought that she would actually leave it as it was, even though he told her so. Women tended to do whatever they pleased. His experience with Mei has taught him many things, and one of which was that he never had the final say in everything. Naruto was forcefully pushed back to the door when Aika threw herself at him, crushing him in a tight hug. A smile formed on his lips. Even when he was in Konoha, no one welcomed him home like this. No one showed affection like this, and those were people he'd saved many times. The only person who showed him affection of this level was Mei Terumi. Unconsciously, his hands moved behind the woman, embracing her. He had been gone for close to 3 weeks, and during that time, there was no contact between her. He too missed her. I miss you, Naruto, Aika said, never letting him go. I thought you may have just left me with all your money and ran away from me. Why would you think that, Aika-chan? Do you have such a low opinion of me? Aika shook her head slightly, a response to his second question. You said you wouldn't take more than 2 weeks, and 2 weeks went by without a word from you. I was worried, thinking that those people might have gotten to you since they knew that you're helping me. Did they come while I was away? That would be a problem since he thought he'd eliminated all the fools. This would only mean that they were watching her from afar, and saw it when she was glowing with money. He really did slip while at this place to actually allow something like that to happen. Aika nodded. 2 of them came, she said, a bit down. I'm really sorry, Naruto. She broke the hug and settled on staring at his eyes, giving him a pitiful look. Sometimes I really think women are manipulative, Naruto thought, seeing that look on her face. When such a look came, defenses were lowered and he would allow her to enter. Still, this was Aika. He brought her close to his chest and held her comfortably. It's all right, Aika-chan, he said. She probably didn't even get to pay for their new place. He had more cleaning duty to do. This was what he got for playing ignorant to the evil of this world. This was what he got in return for leaving her alone without protection. Come on, Naruto said as he led Aika to the couch. He sat her down before sitting beside her. Aside from the unwanted, how were things with you? Did you get to have some fun? Focusing on the good, a good plan. Everything else went smoothly. I got a job at a bank, she exclaimed happily. Naruto smiled proudly at her. You did well, Aika-chan. I might even take you out on a date someday, or even a resort. Really? She wasn't thrilled about a date. No, going to a resort. Money has been so dry that she wasn't even able to afford for a day at a spa. Naruto didn't seem to struggle with jewels. He could work something out, and she could enjoy herself if he was actually serious. Naruto nodded. Naruto Uzumaki promises that one day, he will take you out for a week-long vacation at any place of your choice. I will even rob a train transporting gold if I can't afford the vacation. He gave her a thumbs up and a smile. I will hold on to your promise, Naruto, Aika said. Naruto's happy smile was replaced by a blank smile. He moved closer to Aika, holding up her chin, while his eyes stared right at hers. You said you miss me. Just how much do you miss me, Aika-chan? He asked while moving for a kiss. Aika stopped him by placing her index finger on his lips. Not that much, darling, she said with a wink. But keep trying, maybe one day you'll be lucky. Aha, and I was looking forward to it, Naruto sighed, before flashing a grin. I heard a crazy rumor when I was returning. I'm telling you, it is the craziest thing I've ever heard. Wanna know? 3 hours later, a distance away from the royal castle, there were several hills mounted up together in numbers. Naruto was standing tall on one of them. Hizui noted that he looked exactly like a statue since he'd been standing, unmoving for some time now. Her guards were a few feet away since she wasn't allowed to leave with just her personal guard. But she told them to wait up so she could talk to Naruto alone. His request to meet here sounded personal, and she was going to give him that much. He deserved at least that much for all the help he gave her. Naruto turned around to face Hizui with a somewhat sad look on his face. Your trust in me will always be rewarded, princess. So long as you live, this trust you've shown in me will always be repaid. Just coming here to meet him meant more to what she really thought of him. If she had thought he was after something, she wouldn't have come here. But she risked everything and came here to meet him, away from the comfort of the royal castle. He could kill her and get away without being caught in this kind of place. Hizui knows it, and yet she came simply because she trusted him. Such trust wasn't just found everywhere. Naruto thought only a handful of people could show this much trust to a total stranger whose past was just one big mystery. She trusted him more than anyone, yet she wasn't the person he showered with affection the most. You haven't done anything to make you mistrust you, Naruto, Hizui said with a smile. She did wonder why the sad smile, but since he called her here, she figured he would eventually explain. I sold my services to the royal family for gold, then disappear for about 3 weeks. When I return, I request a meeting with you in a secluded place. Wouldn't you find that suspicious? Hizui didn't deny it. She nodded. It is suspicious, but I'm sure you had your own reasons for doing what you did. Unless there is proof to say you're not what you sold yourself to be, I will continue to believe what you say to me. That really means a lot to me, princess, Naruto said. He jumped down to stand level ground with her while standing close to her. I am going away for some time. Silence settled for a few moments before Hizui spoke. You called me here to say goodbye, she said. Foreign emotions swelled inside of her. The realization didn't make her happy. It saddened her. Despite saying he was only going away for some time, Hizui got the feeling that it was probably going to be a long time, and it somewhat scared her. She didn't want to think of how it would be like without him. She had been practically jumping in joy when she found out he returned, but now this. Naruto nodded. I will return. There is just something that I must do, he said. He then took out a letter and handed it to her. Please give this to Aiko-chan. I couldn't say goodbye to her. Hizui took the letter. Aiko-chan. He was mentioning her for the second time now. She didn't think that he would be cowardly enough to be afraid of saying goodbye, but she wasn't going to judge. Why did you call me out here, Naruto? If this was all he wanted, he could have spoken to her back at the castle or at the library. There had to be a reason he brought her here, and she expected him to at least honor her with an answer. Coming here was a gamble on her part, but it did pay off. I wanted to assure myself if I could really count on you. I wanted you to know that you can always trust me, Naruto said quietly. Trusting people is something I struggle against, but I am thankful that I trusted a person like you. Now that I know how much you trust me, I can say these to you. Whenever you call for me, I will come for you, and I will never betray you. Naruto swears in the name of Kushina Uzumaki. Hizui was quiet for a few moments. This is actually hard, she chuckled. I am also thankful that my trust in you didn't end up in pain, and I truly hope that you never forget me. You will always be in my mind, princess, Naruto said. I have begun work on a book I have titled Time. It will help you with time/travel once I have completed it. There are still many elements that I must add on and research. But once I have completed it, I will return to give it to you. I hope that is soon. So do I, princess, Naruto said. Before turning around to leave, I'll see you until then. Hizui caught his right hand with both her hands, forcing him to face her. She smiled as she tried, failing miserably to mask her emotions. Will you say my name? I've always been the princess to you, Hizui. I guess now we have broken through the barriers that hindered some things, Naruto said as he wrapped his hands around the princess. Stand tall, dear. Do not be afraid to explore new worlds. There is no mountain that can't be climbed. Do not be afraid, do not waver, and if you feel like you're falling, call for me, and I will give you my hand. Naruto then kissed her on her forehead before continuing. Stay true to your convictions, Hizui. The path to destiny isn't all merry, but know that you're not alone, and never allow anyone to sway you from your beliefs. Stay as Hizui. If you dare change, I will break into the royal castle and burn down all your work that I promise you. Nothing will change me, Naruto. Naruto smiled once more before pushing her away from him. I hope so, he said. Ja-ni, Hizui-chan. He disappeared after those words left his lips. It was time for a god to go on another long journey. Hizui stared at the spot he'd been standing for a few moments. It suddenly felt like she had been thinking it was a dream, and now the reality had been brought before her. She felt sad, the simple reason being that Naruto was gone. And she feared he was going to be doing heavy things. She could sense it in her gut that she would be hearing more about him before he does return. Chapter 4. The Mask of God. Naruto looked at the large pyramid that stood in the middle of the ancient ruins. It wasn't exactly visible to the naked eyes, but nothing was really hidden before the eyes of Naruto Uzumaki. He figured that no one really had ventured into the pyramid since it wasn't visible to the naked eye, and it wasn't exactly tangible for one to touch it if you couldn't see it. Sighing once more as he gathered the energy reserve stored within his muscles, Naruto closed his eyes. He was preparing himself for what was coming. What he was going to hear from this being that brought him from the elemental nations. His life wasn't his anymore. He had died, and this being that called him here had sacrificed his life to being him here. As far as it concerned him, Naruto knew that he had died, and this could only explain why he was alive and all parts of his body present. If someone had given their life for him to live, he could at least hear what they had to say. As if it was on automatic, the walls shifted to create a passage for him to enter. The passage he walked through was deathly quiet. Candles were lit on the walls, giving the passage a dim light. Some sort of thick mist flowed on the surface where his feet touched. He couldn't see where he was landing, but he still walked without fear or doubt. His eyes were only focused on the end of the passage. Once he made it out of the end of the passage, he reached the center of the pyramid. It was rather clear as day. The center was some sort of a hall, the entrance being at the one he used. All four sides were empty, but there was something like a tomb in the middle and a man sitting on top of it, legs crossed. He was wearing a white gown, exactly like Hagoromo's, and had small black eyes, as well as shoulder-length black hair. Naruto didn't reach the man, but stopped at a safe distance. "You surely did take your time in coming here," the stranger said calmly. "I could have ceased to exist if you had taken much longer." The voice was the same as the one that had spoken to him in the river village. It was a bit light though, but the same voice nonetheless. In response, Naruto shrugged. "I don't think you would have allowed yourself to cease to exist before you spoke to me if you really wanted to tell me something important." "That may be true, but when your time is up it is up," the man said. "I am not surprised someone like you would say something like that though. You are the same person who promised Mason that you would return from the dead if your plan doesn't work." He sounded a bit amused. Sometimes he truly went overboard when making promises, but then again, the power between life and death was inside his hands. He existed in the physical plane and the spiritual plane. Why wouldn't he believe he could return from the dead? On top of that, he did the impossible, even some things he considered to be godly. How couldn't he believe that the impossible would happen if he did many of such things? Before he could respond, it was only then did he realize that the man in front of him was a ghost. He could see through him. He didn't say his findings out loud. He settled for responding to the remark about his promise. "I gave up too much for things to turn out in a way I did not think. If my spirit is watching, then it surely wouldn't rest in peace until its body is revived. Of course, since I am here, that can happen." Being here meant that even if he couldn't remain in a plane where he could observe the elemental nations. But if he existed somewhere, he wouldn't be here. Being here meant that his soul was in this world. Everything of his existence had been removed in order to be brought here. Perhaps he had been a little too naive to think that he would be able to move between the dead and living as he so wishes. Hagoromo couldn't do that. He couldn't even show himself to everyone, and he couldn't interfere with things directly. The fact was simple. He was a dead man, and so was he. Even if he had turned into the state of Hagoromo, he could only influence little. "You dream too much. Simply because you existed between life and dead didn't mean that you could return from the dead anytime you chose. Once you died, you lost that power, but you studied enough to know it. Could it be that you only choose to believe otherwise just so you can assure yourself that things are well in the elemental nations because you aren't tossing and turning?" Naruto appeared thoughtful for a moment, but he shrugged in the end. "Maybe," he said. The man smiled. "Let us move on to why we called you here, shall we?" He paused to see Naruto's reaction, and continued when he got what he wanted. "Your first question is what happened during the last battle. I will tell you this bluntly. It is as Kurama told you. In the end, they burned your body to ashes." "Not so surprisingly after all I did," Naruto said. He didn't seem too concerned about it. "Then, it is not my place to tell you the current situation of the elemental nations. To be more precisely, I can no longer go to that world. I told you already, I sacrificed a lot to bring you here." The man jumped down the floor before walking towards Naruto. He stopped just inches away before speaking again. "I am glad that I revived you and brought you here. Just seeing you in person assures me that you're that person I needed. Can you show me that power that had you hailed as a god?" "I can't do that," Naruto said simply, but seriously. "Even though I saw most of the things you did before bringing you to this world, I don't know the extent on your power now since Kurama's power is available to you without limits," the man responded. "My body can't handle it, not now at least. I can't even control it all." "I see," the man said before returning to his chair. "You forcefully tore the barrier between the first container of magic and second origin. Most advanced wizards learn to use second origin, but you have forced all containers to mix, creating one large container. Unfortunately, this process forced Kurama's power, which you inherited, to combine with your own chakra as the body fought for a way to contain all that power. Right now, because you have neglected training, physically, your body isn't strong enough, either is it strong enough to use your magic nor when you combine magic with chakra. If you release the limiters you set up, all that power will be seeping out of your body in a tangible form, and runs the possibility of destroying your body. Yet you asked me to show it to you," Naruto added. The man shrugged. "You always ridiculed those who couldn't control their power during your demon days. I thought you would fight for control over it just to flout it. You're proud of it, after all. Despite being revered as a demon, you happily wore the armor of a god and still yourself as such. That was the past, and it won't take me much effort making my body strong again," Naruto said. Who and what are you? For someone who was saying he didn't have much time left, he was awfully going off topic. But Naruto guessed that the man didn't have to worry about ceasing to exist since who he has brought back to life is right in front of him. During the Dragon Age, I came to exist. I watched humans battle dragons, humans killing each other. I witnessed the birth of Zeref. Before Zeref was, I was. I didn't master dark arts. I simply mastered all forms of magic, with the exception of everything that has to do with black magic. My power grew too much, and I secluded myself away from civilization. During isolation, I continued growing my power to the point where it spiraled out of control, resulting in what you see. I was turned into a ghost. You could say it was my curse for choosing to live in isolation rather than saving the human race during dark hours when I had the power to do so. As a bonus to this curse, my hands can't touch anything of this world, and no one of this world can touch me or even hear me. Because you can't have any direct contact with anyone of this world, you called me. For what purpose? When I lost my body, I realized that I should have taken part in the fight against evil. I saw myself as God because of my power. Arrogance grew and I chose not to see myself as a human anymore. I thought there was no need for a god to involve himself with human matters. It was better to allow humans to solve things themselves. Perhaps I simply did not care about my kind, and when came to care, it was already too late. They did solve things and some peace settled after Zeref disappeared. But over the past years, evil has been accumulating in a mass, and I fear the human race may see its end. You already know of Acnologia. He will someday appear in this world, again, and I tell you, that dragon sees humans as nothing more than insects. He isn't afraid of wiping them out of existence, and he has the power to do so. Although I cannot give you my power, I believe you can save humanity and vanquish all that is evil. Because of your eyes, you can manipulate all forms of magic, and do so much more than anyone in this world can. You're a god after all. Naruto was silent. He was disappointed. He had been thinking of living a normal life, but he was now being forced into the fold because someone who refused to aid humanity back then was trying to make up for his mistakes. He couldn't fault and rebuke this man for his actions. No, everyone does what they think is right, but if we do acknowledge our mistakes, we try to move past them. This is what this man was trying to do. He was trying to make up for what he didn't do back then. All these powers he held, the will to survive, the will to do what was right, it made him the right candidate. Yet Naruto wasn't sure he was ready for the role of being a hero. He had played the villain, and quite honestly, he had excelled in his role as the demon god. Being good in the eyes of people would only make him question if he should have done things differently. Naruto had known that he would know his fate by coming to this place. It wasn't like a hammer had been dropped on his shoulders, but he was going to be forced to change a little of his outlook in the fight against evil. I wanted you to see Zeref because I wanted you to understand him a bit more, the ghost said. Naruto appeared to be thinking carefully over this. He didn't fault him though. But he would appreciate it if Naruto understood the situation. Having him see Zeref also helped in this regard. He could only hope that the blonde would willingly accept his new role, even if it meant becoming a demon again to save this world. Naruto sighed tiredly. This was all just troublesome. Any fight against evil, I'm all in, he said rather weakly. I thank you in advance, Naruto. I know that you will not fail. My hope in the survival of humans is in you. When you leave this place, I will cease to exist, and you'll never see me again. You will have to forge bonds of your own to keep that evil inside of you from consuming you. You're putting a lot of hope in a single man, Naruto said with a weary smile. That is because I have observed you long enough and know that you're not the type to turn away from those in need, the man said. Though I sacrificed my life so that you can live, your life is still yours. You're free to do what you wish. Naruto simply nodded. I will tell you something you want to know, the ghost said. Yes, it is possible for you to return to your world. You will eventually find the answer. I can only give you this clue. The answer lies in your eyes. If you can gather enough magic, and use your eyes more than you did at the elemental nations, you will find the way. A week later, in front of him stood 5 men with maniacal grins that would be disturbing to anyone, but Naruto had seen it all. There was truly nothing that could scare him. He sighed. He was going to clean the world of vermin. At least he didn't bath the ground with more human blood. These vermin were part of a guild he'd erased from the face of the world, and they'd come for revenge. They only knew it was him because they'd actually witnessed him perform his good deeds. But where did it all start? A month ago, he was enjoying the easy life in the presence of Hijiri and Aika. Flashback. Naruto's nose packed up as a smell of morning eggs entered the confines of his small bedroom. He was quickly brought out of his sleep by the sound of steel rubbing against steel, scrambling eggs. His sleep was being cut short by whoever was inside his premises. Sighing, Naruto looked at the time, 8 a.m. He'd only returned home about 3 hours ago, and he was being forced to wake up so early. A yawn escaped from his lips as he outstretched his body. With nothing but boxers on him, Naruto got out of bed and headed towards the small overcrowded kitchen. Aika was busy making herself breakfast. The blonde sighed when he looked at her. He had known her for about 4 months now and has been working with her for that period. He did meet her at work after all. It was around the time staff members for late-night shifts were on shortage since the ones who were doing the shifts had quit because of the unbearable working conditions. The drunkards he served were quite persistent in their efforts to grope the workers during weekends since many didn't work around the time. Given that many didn't work, it meant that there were much more customers during weekends than weekdays, and that only meant more trouble for them. Some shameless perverts were not even afraid to slap staff members for refusing to be groped. Aika was a little bit kind, and she didn't possess the kind of stone-hardened heart to fight back with her fists when things were going south. The problem was her financial troubles. He could be wrong when saying she was kind. When people were in dire situations, they tended to do anything, even wearing the mask of kindness to fool people to get what they wanted. Such things were no strange in the shinobi world, but he had also seen it in this world. People did everything they could to secure their riches, to get what they wanted. There was not a corner without darkness. It was just a little better than the elemental nations. The rule of the Magic Council brought some stabilization in criminal mages causing havoc around Earthland. In the elemental nations, villages only cared for their own interests, so even if there was a dangerous criminal on the loose, they wouldn't feel obliged to order the elimination corps. While inside this capital of Fiori, things were calm and quite refreshing, but people still suffered within this rich place. Aika was suffering. He didn't know her full story, but she had financial troubles. The only reason she kept up with the shit of those drunkards for customers at work was only because she had to. She needed the pay the job gave her. The woman even worked 2 jobs, one during day and another during the night. I didn't know you loved me this much, Aika-chan, Naruto said, walking over to the black-haired woman. To come here in the morning and prepare me breakfast is so sweet. I would marry you right now. Aika turned to face Naruto. Her lips pursed into a sad smile before she responded. Not for you, she said. But I wouldn't have a problem in marrying you. Really? Naruto's eyes were a little wide, with a huge grin threatening to break free from its shackles. No, Aika said, crushing all of Naruto's dreams with one slap. You're a pervert who is always ogling every beautiful thing he sees. Honestly, even when you're walking with me, you always look elsewhere when another tramp walks by. Well, at least he didn't go sleeping around. Even though he was always hitting on everything nice he sees, he was never quite serious about anything. If Aika were to be honest with herself, ever since she met him, she had never seen him with a girl inside his apartment. She had never heard any girl from work, or any of the loyal customers saying they banged him. That was something, since every time he retires from work, he was always taking a girl back to her home, a drunk lady who probably stuffed her tongue down his throat a couple of times before they even left the bar. No one could deny that he was good-looking, and his kind smiles, flirty behavior only ranked up some good points for him. Not every woman liked the kind though. He had consoled a number of customers who were going through a rough patch, and often they tended to throw themselves at him to thank him. Naruto didn't seem to mind hitting anything that has sizable breasts. Although he acted like he didn't, he wasn't actually that much of a sex-obsessed fellow. The thing that brought her closer to him was his kindness, one thing he always shows to everyone, even those who hold a grudge for things that happened at work. He was always the supportive man, always looking out for others. Well, he would probably make a good husband. That wasn't nice, Aika-chan, Naruto said, now standing just away from her, leaning against his refrigerator. What is the occasion? I don't remember giving you spare key for this. Aika didn't respond. She continued to prepare her breakfast. Once finished, she sat down at the dining table within the crowded kitchen while Naruto stood still, leaning against the fridge. I am hungry, she simply said. I can see that. Naruto didn't move. He just continued to stare at her as she stuffed down food down her throat. You didn't seem hungry a few hours ago when we was at work. There was something bothering her, otherwise she wouldn't have come here to eat. He had given her his spare key to crash any time she left she needed him, or just to relax at his place. Her neighborhood was quite hazardous, as demons wearing the mask of flesh were always parading around. It was also quite noisy, and wasn't that close to this place. Her situation was what made him always remind her that he worried about her. Although she almost accepted whatever shit that was thrown at her, she never gave up on her desire to live. Regardless of whatever she had to go through in her life, she was always moving forward, striving to improve things, and she had no one. He liked her for that. The fact that she was still fighting meant that she had yet to lose hope. I got evicted, Aika responded without looking at Naruto. Her eyes went towards his couch where there were 3 bags, presumably loaded with clothes only, and I have nowhere to go. This wasn't what he was expecting for this day. He had expected his day to be just fine, problem-free. But he had promised that as long as he could, he would always look after her, he would always offer her his support and help. Promises were sacred oaths he held very highly, and it wouldn't do well to his conscience to break them. Where are the rest of your stuff? Naruto asked as he sat across her. I sold them. Aika paused for a moment to swallow her food. Her eyes still didn't meet Naruto's. I needed the jewels, but it wasn't enough to get a new place. When did this happen? She looked fine when they were working, and she couldn't have been evicted this morning since she wouldn't have the time to sell her furniture. This only led him to a conclusion that she had been without a place to stay for a few days now, and she has been wandering around. Her presence here only meant that he was her only hope. A few days ago, she refused to be precise with her response. But this time, she looked at Naruto straight in the eyes, and all he saw was a sad and tired young lady who had seen too much already. I hope your offer still stands. A sad smile formed as she waited for his response. I'd never turn you down, Aika-chan. After all, I did give you a key to this place, Naruto said in a warm tone. Like I said before, if you want to make this your home, you're welcome to stay here as long as you want. Aika managed a small happy smile. Thank you, Naruto, she said. You know, I might just end up marrying you. Her eyes were closed, to hide whatever was in them, and the smile on her face didn't really reveal anything. That wouldn't be so bad, Naruto responded before letting loose another yawn. He really needed to get some sleep, but he just continued to watch Aika eat until she finally finished her meal. The black-haired looked at him. You won't even ask me why I couldn't afford my rent when I have 2 jobs, she stated. He didn't really bug her to get the inner details of her story, and he didn't go around snooping to get details on his own. It wasn't that he hadn't asked her before, he had, but she didn't say much, and he said he would respect her privacy and allow her to tell him when she was ready. I told you already. I want you to tell me the rest of your story on your own, not because I pressured you to do so. I want you to be free, Naruto said quietly with a smile. Comfortable silence settled in as Aika gathered her thoughts. I already told you that I have no family left, but I didn't tell you how it came to be like that. Naruto nodded. I didn't pester as I was satisfied with just knowing that there was someone like me, someone who had no one. He was alone in this world. Even in the elemental nations, he only had Mei when he was making history. Even though the woman tried all best to be there for him, her love didn't patch all the gaping holes inside his heart. Friends and family were needed. His line of work left him without friends. The only people he could call family were those liars, Jiraiya and Tsunade. The old man had been his family, but he sort of lost that when the man was revealed to be a deceitful old fart who only thought of the good of Konoha. Being in this world, he had no connections with anyone. He was all alone, just like her. I was happy too. You have no one, but you're always smiling and looking out for others, Aika said. If there is an important lesson I have learned about life, it is that happiness you create for yourself. Everybody have their own mountains to climb. Everyone has a problem to solve. When you start comparing yourself with others, you only serve to give yourself more problems and stress. When you are faced with a burden, no matter how heavy it is, always try to look forward. No matter how many times you fall, always try to get up. There is no shame in grabbing someone for support. Taking that step only means you recognize your limits and that you need someone to help you out. Lying down to mope doesn't solve anything. But what you, Aika, are doing will solve something. Don't ever let the things on your shoulders stop you from smiling. Carrying burdens only mean you carry an extra weight. It doesn't mean you have to allow it to suck out your happiness. So long as you have hope, you can always smile. I don't know how many times I've heard you say those words, but every time I hear them, it feels like it is the first time I hear them, Aika said with a smile. It wasn't a sad smile. There are times when I feel like giving up and just sell myself to prostitution or just die. Regardless of how much money I earn, regardless of how much effort I put, I am always reminded that I have no freedom. My life is not for my own. No matter where I run off to, they always find me. Yet, you're still alive and striving for your freedom. Aika nodded. There is a little voice inside of me that tells me to keep moving, she said before taking a pause. My parents were very wealthy. It was just me, mother and father, but all that changed when they were killed when I was young. Things wouldn't have been so bad because they'd left everything to me, but it turned out that they were involved with some bad people. I was told that they were murdered because they weren't cooperating as they were supposed to. All their wealth was taken away from me by those people and I was left with nothing. My grandmother took me away to her village and took care of me until I grew up. When I did grow up, she sent me away from the village and I went to a town. For at least a year I enjoyed the town life. A few months ago, my grandmother got sick. I had to go back home to look after her. But when I went back home, my grandmother's house was empty, everything was gone. I only found a letter from some people whom my parents supposedly owed. The people who took everything from me weren't the only people my parents were involved with. The reason they didn't us bothered when I was still younger is because they were still searching for me as they wanted to use me as collateral, and they were still fighting with the first group. When they lost, they upped their efforts in finding me. When they finally found us, my grandmother promised to pay the debt in monthly installments. She sent me away because she knew she couldn't keep up with the installments and eventually, those people would use me. She didn't want for me, she wanted me to be happy. When I finally met those people, I was given 2 choices. They either sold me or I worked the debt little by little for the rest of my life. They took my grandmother away for safekeeping while I worked the debt. I would see her each time I made the monthly payment. Before I moved in here, they stopped allowing me to see her because my payments were too low. But since she was sick before they took her, I knew she had probably died since they probably didn't good care of her. And so, I ran away and came here. But they still found me, and beat me up while threatening to sell me to slavery if I ever ran again. I had to get 2 jobs because of it. I was told that my debt was lifelong, and until I died, I would still pay. The money she was making couldn't be much to keep them from doing anything. Unless she was getting them 20 million jewels every month, then it would be understandable. Her day job did make a lot of money. Naruto concluded that those people had many people like her who they extort money from. If they had like a 100 people under their thumb paying around 500,000 jewels a month, then they wouldn't sell her to slavery. Selling her would only bring them once-off money. But this way, money entered their pockets every month, keeping a good flow of cash. Did you get the names of these people? Aika looked at Naruto curiously before responding. They called themselves the Dark Sith. I haven't heard of them. Then again, he had been cooped up with this place to give an eye on what happened outside. We will figure something out, Aika-chan, and I assure you, I will help you solve this matter, even if it means wearing the mask of God to grant your wish. Aika looked at Naruto with a somewhat amused look on her face. The mask of God? Don't make a promise you can't keep, Naruto. She just couldn't picture someone like him wearing a mask of God. But he did make many wishes come true. Naruto Uzumaki always stays true to his promise. Naruto exclaimed as he stood up. He walked over to Aika and took her plate before placing it on the sink. He then returned to her side. She wasn't going to her day job, which only meant she had been fired for sleeping at work. But he wasn't going to bring it up. He gave her his hand. We worked all night, and you must not have slept since you had to get your things and then come here. Let us go to bed. We'll talk about our living arrangements after we have rested. Your hand? Well, you're depressed and your situation has me worked up, and I am really tired. On top of that, I only have one bed, and I'm not going to sleep on the couch. We can comfort each as we drift to sleep. Aika sighed and took his hand. Well, it wouldn't anything we haven't done before, she said. She was not worried of Naruto taking advantage of the situation to get between her legs. She had shared a bed with him on a few occasions and he didn't do anything, though sometimes she wished he did. Naruto. Hiji was too busy today to see him. Well, he had other matters to deal with, and he wouldn't have been able to fully focus on her while he was troubled by Aika's situation. As long as those people continued to live, she would be suffering, and they would eventually do more than beat her up. He didn't want any of that for her. He wanted her to be free from her tormentors. She was working, but didn't enjoy the fruits of her sweat because some people enjoyed ripping where they didn't sow. Naruto had been too ignorant of things since coming here. While the elemental nations had shinobi villages, this world had guilds which were homes to mages. Just as when they wore forehead protectors to show that they were shinobi and of a certain village, mages had guild insignia to show that they were from which guild. These guilds were spread all over Earthland, and if Naruto wanted, he could have made a home in any of these guilds. He was positive that life wouldn't have been so bad. He had lived as a shinobi in Konoha while keeping a happy face because he was happy. Being a mage wasn't all that bad, but it didn't offer him a chance to live a normal life, hence his choice to stay over here and ignore the guilds. There weren't just good guilds around Fiori, there were also dark guilds. The title says it all. You expect a dark guild to be doing what is called evil and everything that has to do with darkness. On his way to the capital, he'd come across one of these despicable guilds who are formed with the idea of doing that which is evil, and he dealt with it accordingly. But since then, he had stopped looking out there, keeping a blind eye on the dark alleys of the capital, and choosing to look at the happy smiles of some who chose to live happily. But he couldn't ignore it anymore. He wasn't going to do anything drastic though. He would try to negotiate with these people before doing anything. Sometimes it was better to communicate than to use fists outright. Diplomatic didn't usually work in the shinobi world, though. Shinobi only listened when a kunai was pressed against their necks. He hoped it would be a little different. But the hope was little. He needed to get millions of jewels to settle Aika's debt. He already had a couple of millions from his savings since he didn't really do much with his monthly pay. Before he had even come to the capital, he had a couple of million jewels which he only used to furnish his small apartment. His rent wasn't even that high and he had no responsibilities whatsoever. He had many ways to get the jewels he needed, all good ways. He could join a guild and do many jobs. He could sell some of his products to willing buyers. Joining a guild wasn't on his cards at this moment. Selling some of his products was going to do it, and he knew who would be willing to buy, and probably cough up a couple of millions in jewels. Since Hiji was busy, he could use this chance to get it done. Sighing, Naruto walked away from the library and headed towards the royal castle. He wasn't going to see Hiji. She didn't even know that he'd set foot in the place before. When a stranger arrives in the capital and quickly befriends the princess, and even develop a working relationship with her, the higher-ups in the royal family become suspicious. Even he would be suspicious about who his child was hanging out with. Naturally, the head of the royal guard approached him one day and brought him to the castle to discuss a few things. Basically, he had been called for an interrogation. For obvious reasons, the princess wasn't told about it. It wasn't that Hiji was a puppet in the royal family. No, it wasn't like that. Hell, the young lady had more authority than anyone other than the king himself. Even the prime minister listens to her. She probably had more brains than chief of the royal guard. Once Naruto reached the gates of the castle, he told the guards who he was and whom he wanted to speak to. The guards had him wait while contact was made with the man he wanted to see. It wasn't long before the man himself came to fetch him. He was just as tall as him, fair-skinned, and of a good build. He also looked like a middle-aged man. His hair was short, a few threads hanging over his forehead, and he had small black eyes. He was wearing the usual royal guard uniform, but carried no weapon. Naruto, the man started with a smile. Come on with me. Naruto really didn't like the kind of smile this man gave him. There were many snakes in this world and in the previous. There was no hiding from them. No matter where you go, you're always going to come across this kind of people. This man cared little less for him. He cared about doing his job as head of the royal guard. These were the kind of people who'd probably discard their family, and everyone else for the sake of their jobs. It was a bit hypocrite of him to think of such. He did after all discard his friends in favor of seeing through his goal. Perhaps the man was even better than him. He had something to offer, and this man had been patiently waiting for it. His abilities with seals was known to these people as they made it their business to know everything they can. For security reasons, they would say. He could be wrong, and this man wouldn't throw him out once he gave what he had to offer. The times of peace have dulled his once sharp senses, and he was probably rusty in fighting since he hasn't fought during the 6 months period he had been here. Naruto continued to keep his silence as they walked within the passages of the castle heading towards the Royal Guard facilities. "You're awfully quiet," Takada said. "But I am told that you're a rather talkative person when with the princess." There wasn't a hint of anything. What Naruto did know about this man was that he cared for the empire, and was loyal to the royal family. He had lived with betrayers long enough to be able to sport them even when his once sharp senses have now dulled. "Time and place," Naruto offered his response in a quiet tone. The place mattered, and he wasn't familiar with this man to start bubbling about this and that. He had only met him when he came to look at some of his fine work, as the princess had said he did some excellent work. He was a willing buyer for the royal guard, but back then, he had refused to sell. He had to do it now. "I didn't think you minded such things, if your actions towards the princess are anything to go by," the man said, looking at Naruto at the corner of his right eye. "My actions towards the princess?" He hadn't done anything wrong to Hijiri. He has been nothing but a good and loyal partner to her. He always respected the boundaries, well, in most cases. Takada nodded. "You seem to have grown rather close to her enough to invade her personal space." Of course he had heard of the incident that occurred a few days ago. He didn't have anything particularly against it. It was somewhat refreshing to know. "We get along quite well, and sometimes I get a little too excited." Naruto paused for a moment to ask a question. "Is it wrong to be in the personal space of the princess?" "I'd imagine that it would be a problem to the royal family to have a nobody getting a little too close to the princess of Fiori." Takada chuckled lightly while shaking his head. "What do you think of her?" Naruto didn't have to think twice to offer his response. "She is a kind young lady who loves her country. She is willing to do anything to protect it, and has the heart to make decisions that have to be taken by someone in authority. She is also rather intelligent for her age." "Well said," Takada said with a smile. "It is because of what you say that the king permits the princess to do as she likes. She doesn't report to her father when she is doing her experiments, not even when she uses large amounts of gold to buy the equipment she needs. Hijriheim is not a child, and everyone knows she can make decisions on her own. If she doesn't have a problem with you invading her personal space, then we will accept that. Personally, I have nothing against you. You're not doing anything to draw her away from her duties as a princess. In fact, you help her. But if you were standing in the way, then we would have problems." He already knew that Hijri wasn't just seen as the child of the king. She wasn't just a young woman. She was a capable leader who is responsible and loyal to her country. She didn't seem to realize it herself that she was trusted with almost everything. Her father would probably give her the reins and very few would complain about it. She commanded noteworthy respect from everyone in the royal castle. "That is good to know," Naruto finally responded with a sigh. Perhaps he had been wrong about this man. He appeared to have no problems with his relationship with Hijri as long as she did her job and didn't bring shame to the country because of him. "Why do you think that Princess Hijri's personal guard is able to leave you alone with her without worrying about her safety?" "The job of a guard is to be an attendee of him her that he guards at all times. In fact, as long as the princess is outside this castle, her guard must always be watching her movement. Failure to do so is incompetence. If something were to happen to the princess while he guard wasn't by her side, then he would have to account to it. The man risks much by allowing the princess to be with Naruto alone. If evil people were to be on the loose, running after the princess' life, then someone would be needed to fight them. If the personal guard wasn't there, who would fight for the safety of the princess?" "The princess said something about it being safe with me. I imagine it is because she knows I have no cruel intentions towards her. If there was little suspicion, I believe I would have been removed away from her some time ago," Naruto responded with a thoughtful look. "That is part of it," Takada said. "We have indeed checked everything about you, but aside from a few incidents some months ago, there has been nothing about you. It is like you just popped out of the blue. We're not concerned about it though. After studying your activities in the past months, we have concluded that you're an honest person. This is why you're allowed to spend time with the princess." Naruto nodded. He would be surprised if they suddenly said they knew where he came from. His background would remain a mystery until the time is right to spill the beans. It was still understandable that they'd go through all lengths to protect the princess. She was the future of Fiori after all. "The main reason I have no fears of the princess' safety is because I know you're a mage, a capable one for that matter." The bomb was dropped. Naruto didn't show any physical reaction to it, nor did the expression on his face change. He had experienced too much to lose his composure. So far, he only showed skills in runes/seals. He never told anyone he was a fighter. There was a limiter on him that he set to avoid the power he had inherited from leaking. Only someone with fine eyes would be able to sense some of his own monstrous magic, not to mention he still had chakra. "How do you figure?" Takada smiled. "When you have lived as long as I have, nothing much can miss you. Your posture is always relaxed, never showing that you're on guard. You do nothing out of the ordinary to reveal that you're a capable mage, but your eyes say it all, and regardless of much you try to hide your magical power, you can never suppress it completely. I did tell you that I know of your activities before you came here. I see, Naruto said, as I suspected you're a former wizard, a strong one for that matter. He would still not deny nor confirm anything the man had said. It was safe to keep it that way. I don't know about that, Takada said as they went through large double doors. The room they entered was more of a training facility than anything. There were 4 men doing some light exercises. Follow me, Takada ordered the 4 men. They went through an exit in the training facility. It led them straining to what appeared to be a battlefield. Naruto guessed this was where they tested weapons. It was behind the castle. The terrain was nothing but clear ground with a few craters. There was not a single blade of grass. The 4 men went on to stand beside Takada holding their spears. You came here about that offer, I presume. Naruto nodded. I already told you that I wished to bolster the offensive and defensive power of the Royal Guard. Now I have come to realize that though we have many men, they lack quality to go against mages. Some of them can't even wield magical weapons probably. Takada shook his head. I have been looking for different methods to improve the quality, but nothing has satisfied me so far. The strength of an army isn't always determined by individual effort, but by the collectiveness of the group. A weak army weakens the country, and a strong army does the opposite. Without drawing out the quality and sharpening the skills of individuals in a group, they can carry fancy weapons but still lack the expertise to use them. I have come to understand that the weapon doesn't matter much, but the one who wields the weapon is what matters. I can give you something that will strengthen your weapons, but if your men do not have the mental edge to wield them probably, it won't make any difference. Takada waved his right hand in a dismissive manner. Don't concern yourself about that, I will deal with it. Naruto nodded and motioned for one of the guards to give him his spear. The blonde pointed it at the barren ground before it shot a laser beam that traveled for a small distance before dying down. This is the normal shot of the spear, he said as he touched the tip of the spear before pointing it at the clear field. This is after I have touched it. A blue round magic seal formed at the tip of the spear. A blast that tripled the first one in magnitude shot out of the spear and traveled a longer distance before hitting something and exploded. Naruto turned to face one of the guards. Shoot me, he said. The man didn't need to be told twice. He pointed his spear straight at Naruto, and shot a laser beam that went straight at the blonde. Naruto pointed his own spear at the beam before the same blue magic seal appeared. It was twice as big as the fist one. When the beam connected with the seal, it was absorbed. Impressive, Takada said. Increase offensive power, and a shield that absorbs magic. Naruto placed the spear on his right shoulder before he responded. This weapon was designed to utilize the magic within the wielder. In other words, in order to use it, one must push his/her magic into the spear. In most cases, it works better for those who have holder kind of magic. What I have done is put in a seal that creates a mirror when magic is flowing within the spear. This mirror is two-way, it absorbs the original shot from the spear before releasing it on the other side. As you have seen, the power of the beam is increased. The more magic you have, the larger the scale the mirror expands the beam. The shield is also the same mirror as I said, it is a two-way mirror. When any form of magic is coming, you erect the mirror, and it will absorb the technique. However, depending on the strength of the wielder, there will be limits with how much the mirror can keep absorbing magic. There is a possibility that it won't be able to absorb powerful magic. The magic that is absorbed can either be stored within the spear. When it is stored, it means that you no longer use your own magic but continue to shoot the magic you have absorbed. You can absorb and then release it in the same time. As it is a mirror, it is more like reflecting. As I said, there are limits. If you absorb too much magic, this thing will explode and it might be nasty. Takada was silent for a few moments, as he sorted everything that Naruto had said. This seal, how do you apply it? And can it be erased? What I have done now, write it down on the tip of the spear with my magic. In this form, it can't be erased. As long as the spear remains, the seal will always be present. Another way to apply it is to engrave the seal markings when the spear is being crafted. In this way, it doesn't matter where you put it. Don't I have to understand the seal in order to activate it once it is engraved on the spear? Naruto shook his head. As long as there is not fault in the formula I give you, it will activate on its own once magic flows through the spear. The blonde paused for a moment as he thought for a lighter way to explain it. In a practical way, what I will be giving you is like a stamp. Everything is already set. All you need to do is stamp that which needs to be approved without even understanding the mechanism behind the stamp. Is there anything else? Naruto nodded. I have also created a seal that can be used on the armors your men wear. Now, this shield can protect one from physical attacks and purely magical attacks. Its durability depends on the damage the wearer receives. It doesn't matter how strong you are. If the shield takes considerable damage, it will break. There is also a token I formed that will increase speed of the one that applies. This will only be temporarily though, but the speed gained will be great, and not so easy to deal with. Let us see this, shall we? You have thrown in theories. I want to see all these practically, Takada stated. Naruto nodded and motioned for the 4 guards to follow him to a good distance. Hours later, Naruto was tired. Hell, if it wasn't for the fact that Aika was probably waiting for him, he would have passed out already within the castle. It was already dark outside. They could just throw him in one of the spare rooms since there were many of those rooms in this place. That man had made him do so many things today. At least he didn't end up showing any of his magic to the man. He had seen that the man was a little disappointed that throughout his exhibitions, he didn't use any of this real magic, or even use any physical attacks. He was always using the guards to do it, and the weapons that were available to him. He wasn't that easy to read, and even when he was playing under that man's thumb, he wouldn't act so stupid and reveal things he liked to keep hidden. Overall, he was proud for being able to keep his guard up and never make a single mistake to give that man anything to read. It could only lead him to be exploited if he let his guard down and allowed the man to know more about him. He hadn't denied nor confirmed that he was wizard after all. He was a little surprised when Takada told him where the princess was and had told him see her before he left. If it was to see the princess, well, Naruto didn't relent. He allowed of the guards to lead him to the princess' quarters. It would be for the first time he would be seeing her at home. He always saw her at the library and never within the castle. Once they reached the doors, leading to Hijui's quarters, more guards were stationed outside the large doors. Well, it was for security. Even the most fortified places have been infiltrated by evil geniuses. There was no place that was secure to some humans. Still, Naruto didn't think there would be anyone who would want to harm the kind princess. She had no problems with anyone. Naruto was allowed entry into the quarters. From first glance, there was no doubt that this was the home of a princess. Lights glittered from the ceiling in the living room. Naruto didn't look elsewhere. He just went down to make himself comfortable on the couch. A few minutes passed and the princess finally came around. Her surprise at his presence was evident on her face and tone. Naruto, she walked over to him carefully, looking at him questionably. Did you break in here? She sat down on a sofa just away from Naruto, on his left side. Naruto shook his head with a smile. He was tempted to say yes, but time wasn't on his side. I wanted to see you because you didn't come for our study today, and I am going to be away for a few days. She still wore her normal outfit even inside her comfort zone. He had expected her to be wearing something different. He wasn't disappointed though. The view was just fine. Are you going somewhere? And did they just allow you entrance just like that? She didn't think he would come here. Even if he was going away, he could have sent her a letter, or sent someone. Strangers also weren't allowed in this part of the castle. Though Naruto wasn't much of a stranger, but as far as she knew, he'd never even been here before. I have some matters to deal with while going over to the magic library to search for something, Naruto responded calmly. I've been here in the castle for a few hours now. I was leaving and just thought why not say hi if my presence is still tolerable in the sight of the royal guard. Hijui became curious of what he had been doing in the castle without her. But she didn't ask him, thinking that if he wanted to tell her, he would. If not, she would eventually find out about it. How long? I don't know, Naruto answered. It will depend on certain things, and there are many books in that library. Searching for the right book I need will take a lot of time, but I won't be gone for too long. I might take a week or more. He just needed to solve Aika's mess problem, then return here. Since Aika obviously knows those people's trail, it will be easy for him to follow them and seek out a way to solve without having to spill blood. But if it can't be helped, the choice will only be one. Wear the mask of God and do what must be done. The cost of many lives was going to save one life. That was how sometimes things worked. If things went south, Naruto was going to be forced to go in a path he wasn't prepared to take. At least this time he was going to play hero. No one would be crying because of him. A demon god playing hero. How amusing. Hiji nodded. It will be for the first time I spend more than a week without your presence, she said. Ever since they became partners, she was always with him after lunch. Not more than 2 days went by without seeing his face, his smile. Seeing him from time to time had become so natural, she never thought that this natural order of things would be disturbed. Yeah, Naruto agreed. I can't believe it has been 6 months already. Time has moved a little faster. Well, when you had things to do, there never seemed to be enough time. Still, it was overall fun being in this place. Time surely moves fast. Hijui paused, appearing thoughtful. A small shrug of her shoulders followed before she continued. What are you going to look at in the magical library? Time travel magic, Naruto sighed. He was going to reveal this to the princess. A few days ago you told me that you were trying to learn dimensional travel magic, and attempt to develop it. My study on teleportation came as a result of something along the same lines as your research. You see, over the past year, I had been trying to understand if it was possible to time travel, and if it was, I wanted to see if I could create magic that would allow me to travel through time. Since Kurama's voice disappeared, and he was just in a new world. The thing is that he had died, and suddenly thrown into this world. Kurama had thrown 2 possibilities, Kakashi's Kami and the one about a second chance given to him by Kami. There were many questions that he had, and to answer them, he had to know if time travel was possible. Surprised, Hiji asked, did you get somewhere with it? Only the basics. I did some research, but I stopped when I came here, instead of searching for how he'd come here. He had chosen to live his new life. Honestly, he wanted to know how things ended up in the elemental nations. But obsessing about time travel wasn't going to make him happy, hence he discontinued with the research. Since you brought it up, I will look into it while at the magic library. Why did you stop? No, before that, why would you want to travel through time? Most people who wished time travel was possible were those who wished to go to the past and change things. It was often sad people who couldn't move on with their lives. I stopped because I enjoy my time here. It has been truly refreshing. As for my reasons, I will tell you someday. Hijri was positive she saw a flicker of sadness in his eyes, even if it was for a second. Why continue now? You brought up the subject, and since I am going to a place where I might get vital information, why not? It is something I'm doing for you. Naruto then stood up. Well, I'd better be leaving or Aika-chan will be worried about me. Aika-chan? I never told you about her. Well, they didn't talk about their personal lives during their meetings. She is my new roommate. Hijri stared at him blankly for a few moments. Naruto, she started quietly. Is she your girlfriend? No, not at all. She is a friend. Again, Hijri stared at him blankly for a few moments before responding. Naruto, the tone was quiet. Your apartment only has one bedroom. Are you going to be sharing a bed with her? I don't think you'd sleep on the floor, and you would never allow a girl to sleep where you can't. Naruto blinked twice. Like I said, she isn't my girlfriend, he said a bit quickly. I don't want you to find out from someone else as to why I was here. I was helping Takata-san make some improvements on the weapons of the Royal Guard. He changed the subject. Hijri stared before shaking her head. What kind of improvements? That is for another day. I am really late, Naruto said. Stay safe, princess. Should I walk you? Naruto shook his head. I'm gonna be running when I leave here. I don't want Aika-chan to worry about me. If you walk me out, I will be slow. Hijri nodded. Well, next time do stay for dinner, she said with a small smile on her face. Naruto's apartment. Where have you been? This was the greeting Naruto received as soon as he stepped inside his dark sitting room. The woman didn't feel at least happy about his late coming. The kind of tone she used was enough to send chills down his spine. If they were a couple, he wouldn't be get any for some time, not until he went down on his knees to beg for mercy and forgiveness, after a full explanation of what had made him return home late. Good thing she was just a friend. Naruto pressed the switch of the lights on the left side of the door so that he could be able to see clearly. He almost jumped up and ran back to the royal castle to the comfort of Hijri when he saw the look Aika was giving him. He couldn't really explain it, but it was somewhat frightening, especially since he wasn't expecting such a look from her cute face. The blonde put on a smile. You don't look happy. Thumbs up for stating the obvious. You can tell a sarcastic response came from Aika. Then? Do I have to hold a stick or are you going to explain things? While she wasn't actually mad at him for staying away late, she was curious for the reasons that may have had him return this late even when he knew that she was waiting for him. They also have to be at work by 8 p.m. It was now already 7 p.m., and he didn't look like he was going to be ready for work. That man they called the boss was surely going to take a bite on their paychecks if they were late for work. This was one job she didn't want to lose, not until she found a better job that set the right environment for her. It was even bad that she had lost her day job, a real job that paid her a lot of money. Still, 2 jobs didn't do enough. If she lost this one too, it would certainly be inviting the hands of hell to drag her into a pit of torment. Naruto stood still at the door, unmoving. When did you become my wife, Aika-chan? Only the wife had to be the one to ask questions like that. Still, with the look on her face, she could actually play the role of an angry wife quite well. If you're not going to explain, I will say this. Good night, Naruto, she said standing up. Don't touch my food, and I don't want you ass on the bed. I certainly don't want to be close to your breath. Who knows what you were exhaling? Her tone was firm, bordering sternness, and she had already turned away from him, leaving him alone. Unfreaking believable. He wasn't supposed to eat the food he bought with his own jewels? He had worked hard to earn the jewels that purchased all the food she had cooked. Hell, he'd even sweat profusely for the money that purchased the comfortable bed she was going to be snoring in while he caught the shoulder of his small couch. Unthinkable. This was his damn apartment. While he was still busy with his thoughts, Aika turned around, a splitting grin on her face. But of course, I am just kidding. Naruto blinked at that. She certainly looked and sounded way seriously. Seeing his look, Aika laughed before returning to the couch. That wasn't funny, Aika-chan, Naruto said, walking over to the woman. He threw himself down on the couch, with his head laying on her lap. He was really tired. When did you learn to school your features like that? She wasn't that hard to read, especially for a veteran like him when it came to reading people's expressions and body language. Aika smiled down at him while she messed up his already messy blonde hair. I learned it from you. Me? Surprised, he was. I didn't think I was giving any lessons. Well, I've spent more time with you than anyone, even the princess, when we count working hours. You interact with a lot of people at work, and regardless of what happens, you're always calm. You're able to control yourself perfectly without showing anything you don't want to show. That is not to say you're always wearing a mask. You're a lot more perceptive than I thought, Aika-chan, Naruto admitted. Did I worry you? Aika shook her head. Not at all, she said. I thought you'd be worried thinking I'd run off to deal with your problem, Naruto stated. Though he was making light of it, he was going to do exactly that. You. Aika's brows furrowed before she shook her head. That could come to mind if you disappeared. Certainly, Naruto was a lot more caring that he let on, and if someone he knew was in trouble, he'd have no problems in trying to help. You look tired. What were you doing? I was working on a really tiring job, Naruto responded without going into details. The man who was working me didn't seem to mind that hours were dipping by one, hence I am late. What of our work then? I resigned both of us today. Before he went on to the library, he'd gone to find that man to tell him that he and Aika were quitting their jobs. Of course, he didn't take it kindly, but Naruto had just enough of that man who lacked any form of morals. He cared for nothing other than profit and the sales of his bitter drinks. What? Aika stared down at him, deadly serious look on her face. She couldn't believe he had done something like that. Her job was her life, and without it, she was as good as dead. I quit my job and mentioned you were also quitting. That job is not good for you and you don't enjoy it anyway. If you want to be happy, you have to work in an environment that is conducive for your happiness. You're sad, Aika, and I want you to be happy, regardless. Aika stayed quiet for a few moments. Naruto, I needed that job. That was all she said, and all that needed to be said. I know, Naruto said. I told you. I was working hard today. The job I was doing worked in a couple of millions. It will be enough to let us through till January. You will be able to make your rounds. We will find good employment for both of us. If we can't find anything, the princess owes me a favor. She will find work for you, a job that pays well. Why? I told you, Aika, I worry about you, Naruto said smiling. Don't think too much about it. Just go with the flow, and I assure you, I will not put you into further trouble. Right now, I just want to eat and rest. Will you feed me? Well, you gave me a place to stay and I eat your food for free. Feeding you is the least I can do for you, and you really look worn out. I do wonder what kind of job you were doing today. Even when he sometimes worked more than anyone at the bar, he never seemed this tired from doing physical work. Today, he must have worked harder than he did normally. It made her smile just to know that he was doing it for her. She used to have everything in her past life, but she didn't have people who truly cared for her other than her parents. The so-called friends were only there because she was the daughter of a rich man. When she lost everything, they all turned their backs on her and walked away, leaving her alone to face the world. She had never been forced to live on her own. But she learned to live on her own after her only family also disappeared from her life. Coming here was the right choice after all. If she didn't come here, she wouldn't have met him. She wouldn't be so comfortable as she is now, even though a man was resting his head on her lap. He was so close, yet she didn't mind. She would never allow anyone to get this close. Naruto was Naruto. He was somewhat harmless. More physical work than I've ever done since I came here, well, almost tiring as the night. Toka-chan kept me up all night, he finished in a whisper, but Aika heard him clearly. Toka-chan? I thought you said nothing happened during that night? Aika questioned, looking down at him with a small glare. This isn't the same night I am talking about, Naruto said with a small tired, nervous smile. Toka-chan and I go way back. When I started working at the bar, she was the one who showed me around the capital and everything at work. I was her friend, and she didn't tell me. More importantly, you slept with her. Well, I was kind of lonely, bored, and she was very convincing. It was the only time he ever slept with anyone from this world. That was about 2 months ago, and more than a year months since he appeared in this world. So over all this time, he's only gotten laid only once. The fact remains. Do you want to get even with Toka-chan? Aika snorted. In your dreams? You'd have to marry me first to get in my pants. She still smiled though. If I wasn't tired, I'd get down on a knee and propose right now, Naruto said tiredly, before standing up. I'm going to get something to eat. We'll talk about our living arrangements tomorrow. Of all the times we've shared the same bed, there has always been something between us. Even now, I'm really tired, so it's okay. Aika nodded. I thought you said you wanted me to feed you? The following day, it was still 5 a.m., but Naruto was already awake. He had agent matters to deal with, and before that, he needed to get to the royal castle before leaving. Aika too was already awake. She wasn't used to much sleep since she normally worked day and night. Naruto sat on the side of the bed while Aika lied down on the bed. I don't know how long my research will take, but it won't be no more than 2 weeks before I return. He'd already told her that he was going to the magic library to conduct some research. She didn't need to know about the other matters he had to handle. His visit to the library wasn't only being brought up now. It has been weeks now since the thought came. I just wish you weren't leaving so soon, Aika said with a sigh. This provides enough time for you to arrange living arrangements. While I like this place as it is, another room is needed for us to be able to live healthily, Naruto responded. With me gone, you can be looking for a place for us to stay. That isn't done for free, you know. I told you that I was doing a job yesterday, and what do you think I do with my earnings when you don't see me buying everything? Despite working in a bar, his earnings weren't that modest. The business wasn't a small thing after all. There were a lot of customers and more money that flowed into the business. Aika shrugged. I don't know. Maybe you have some family somewhere that you send money. There are about 500,000 jewels inside the safe in the wardrobe. Someone else will bring a couple of jewels at around 10 a.m. So don't leave before that person comes. Use the money to get a new place. It is okay if you wish to lease a new house, but don't move anything from here. I still wish to keep this place. Where do you get such jewels, Naruto? I mean, I only have about 35,000 jewels, and that is all I have, nothing more. Naruto merely smiled as he stood up. Just spend wisely and I will return soon. He didn't wait for the black-haired to respond, he walked away from the room. It was time to put on the mask of Kami. What if rinnegan Naruto was sealed in fairy tale? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel. And leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.